Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Slice of Gaming special. Back for our second ever Food Coma episode. First one on Tears of the Kingdom, and that was very exciting. But now we wanted to talk about another big AAA game that released very recently, Final Fantasy 16. A lot of opinions have been brought up about this game, a lot of positive, a lot of negative. And, the Slice of Gaming crew, we want to give our own thoughts on the game, our own opinions. And joining me today, we got my boy Bench.
Hello, just a heads up, we are pretty divided, so this will be more interesting than the endless praise of Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh yeah, trust me, we're gonna have some fun conversations. We're also joined by Fusion.
How's it going? Happy to be here. This game is better than Tears of the Kingdom.
You didn't play Tears of the Kingdom, buddy.
Yeah,
They don't know that.
We're also joined by who joined us last for our last Food Coma, BenjiBop.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, Takashi Kiryu was not able to make it today, so he called me up, and I was able to come in last second and place him on the discussion. So,
Yeah, we tried to message Takashi Kiryu. He just said we're too big for him. He doesn't feel ready for it.
I think he said he was playing Final Fantasy 14. I think that's why he couldn't.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Before we get into anything, I just want to immediately say, if anyone if we can just get some, if you like the podcast, we're on everything. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and Audible. If you could give us a like, we're just a new company. We want to get growing. We really appreciate any support that we can get. But I guess just immediately starting it off, our overall thoughts on the game, like just immediate viewpoints on the game, initial viewpoints. Bench, what do you think of Final Fantasy 16?
It's the second behind Tears of the Kingdom, my number 2 of the year, and I think it is it was amazing. There's a lot of words that you can describe it, but it's cinematic. They always describe it as a roller coaster, and it's definitely that. The combat was excellent. It was excellent. Some of my favorite Final Fantasy casts and the side characters also just really added to everything and made you care about the world. And then a way of you just not having to save it because you save it, you want to save it because you care about the people in it. And I just really loved that. That's probably a highlight of the game. On top of the just boss fights, they're absolutely mind-blowing. Some of the best I've seen in all the games I've ever played.
In all the games you've ever played. Well, look at you go, Bench. Moving on, Benji,
He's a gamer.
what do you think? Yeah, he's a gamer, dude. I gotta respect it. Benji, what do you think?
Yeah, I am so torn with this game. Even it's been like weeks now since I've beaten it, and still, when I think about it and kind of mull it over, I am just so. I don't know if I've ever been more at odds with a game before in my life. It's just like like the highs are so high, but for me the lows are just so low, and I always go back and forth with it. But overall, focusing more, I guess, positively, it is just such an excellent game. Great storytelling, great visuals, great gameplay. It's a shit. Like I wish I didn't have so many problems with the game because I really want to love it more. But man, we'll talk about some of the decisions.
We're gonna talk about it. Fusion, how about you?
It's funny because I'm similar to Bench and Benji, where I'm similar to Bench in the way where it's like this is my second favorite game of the year, and I really enjoyed it. But I'm also like Benji, where the lows were so low in this game that I should have loved this video game. Like there was moments in this game where I'm like, this is gonna be the best moment of the year of 2023 that I played, and there was other moments where I'm just frustrated. I'm like, why'd you throw this into your video game? So I'm so excited to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, because as Binks said at the beginning, I think this is gonna be a very some people are on one side of the spectrum and then others are way lower. So I'm interested to see what we're all gonna say.
Yeah, I'm kind of. Every podcast needs a villain. I'm going to be the villain for this podcast. I'll be honest. I was extremely disappointed with this game. This is not my second favorite game of the year, like a lot of you guys. But I think the game has a lot of positives, but just overall, it really felt like I was slogging my way through it. The negatives were so low. And I understand like the highs were high, like there were moments that were very high for me, but they weren't high enough for me to completely forget and ignore the massive pitfalls that I feel like this game falls into. I don't think it's a bad game, not in the slightest, but I also don't think it is a 9 out of 10, or even a 10 out of 10 like a lot of people were saying. That was the part that was shocking to me. There's just too much wrong with this game for me to ignore, and near the end I just wanted it to end. But even saying all that, I still like the game. I still think it's a good game. I just don't think it's a great game, and it's really disappointing because this was easily one of my most anticipated of the year, and that just did not work out the way I wanted it to. But of course, we're gonna delve more deep into it as we all want. Bench, since you're the highest, is there like anywhere you wanted to start?
Let's start with the characters. I think that's a good
Oh.
starting point.
Oh, here we go. I got some choice words.
Oh,
Go
you got
ahead.
some choice words.
All right.
So, you want me to go first, or do you?
Yes, yeah. You're the one who started the topic. Go for it.
I think Clive is very good, and from looking at him from the beginning to the end is pretty mind blowing. And see how he's frozen as a shield, then he completely falls chasing revenge, and then he finds out he's the person he was chasing. I mean, sure, it might have been predictable, but it was also the part like his character was chasing. And I mean, going in, there were some people that were worried it would be a pure revenge story, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, it was completely far from it. Him evolving and fighting for the greater good. Sure, it's a JRPG story, but I mean, like I said before, just all the characters in the world, you cared for them. Like Jill was also the love story between Clive and Jill. I thought was very well done, and one of the higher video game love stories of the games I've played. I thought they did it very well. The moment on the beach was, I think, great. I know I've seen complain about. Honestly, didn't have any complaints about it. I thought it was a great moment that honestly showed how Clive was wrapped in wanting to do everything himself and not relying on others. And I thought that was very good. And then, like I said, side characters: Gav, Blackthorn, Goots, Karen. You have all like the mainstays, and then you also have the characters that are like in the cities, like Otto. I think I can't remember all their names because it's a while since I beat it, but each are like the innkeepers and mainstays in all the cities who had big side quests, and it really built out the world and made you care about these characters in a way that I don't think many games do. And Torgal is just like the best.
I mean, Torgal. That's it. We all agree Torgal's the best.
That's
character in
cosign.
the game, right? Yeah, we can
that.
all agree there. Yeah. Now, Veggie, did you have any thoughts on like characters?
Oh, I got plenty. So I will say, I definitely agree. Clive is a super strong character, and it also helps that Ben Starr's voice acting was phenomenal for this game, and I think took took the writing to another level. I think about where where he starts and then where he finishes the game. There's a lot of like arcs in there. There's a lot of just growing and kind of taking on all these different roles and responsibilities, and I think it was just really well done. So yeah, I really like Clive, but I also want to shout out Sid. I'm surprised Bench didn't even mention Sid.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess he's been dead so long. Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
It is so good.
Sid was such a strong point in the beginning of the game where I mean I like where that they handled him and how Clive obviously
takes his name.
And yeah, he takes the role of Sid, and that obviously goes into his progression. But I thought Sid was such a strong, like, he really set the tone for the first part of the game until Clive was able to develop into the main character he was meant to be. So I got to shout at him. Uncle Byron, love that guy.
Man. He is like probably the best side character of the year for me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Let's calm
he's
down.
just
Let's calm down. Torgal.
He's just like the energy he carries. The game is very like low and kind of depressing. Sure that people have their thoughts on that, but I mean, like, every time he's on screen, I just have a smile on my face because I just love that guy.
Yeah, he's so like happy-go-lucky, but still like is able. Like, I really thought that he when he would talk about how he used to be a warrior or whatever with his accent, I was like, okay, this guy's, full of shit. There's no way he's actually
No,
this good.
he
And then
backed it up, man.
yeah, no, he backed it up, and I'm like, okay, I love this guy. Like he is just the perfect kind of companion character, and I wish we got more of him, but I liked what we got with him.
I'm glad he didn't die, because that seems like a character that you'd expect to be killed off,
I
but
was
he
fully
wasn't, which I
expecting him
found
to die. Yeah.
pleasantly surprised by the end.
Well, and I also kind of like that he ended up being like not really a father figure, but enough of a parent to Clive when he needed him, and talk about how he used to talk about him and his
Yeah.
dad. And
And
I thought
Joshua.
that added a lot. Yeah, right. Yeah,
I guess we didn't
absolutely.
even mention Joshua, but him being alive, I
I
thought
wonder why.
Well,
Since we're talking about the good characters, I wonder why we didn't mention
You
Joshua.
really
That's
don't like
surprising.
Joshua?
I
I
don't
thought-
dislike him. I just thought he's kind of like whatever.
I actually
I'm like,
think
I don't
Joshua.
need you here.
I thought Joshua was one of the highlights of the game, because
He just
He's
didn't
kinda-
add anything.
he's kind of had. I mean, his journey is like throughout the time. I mean, you learn kind of some of it through the order and through those side quests. But I thought Joshua was just a very good character, just
I
well written
just-
and.
As someone who hates fake out deaths, I just think it's kind of dumb he came back. The whole process of Clive learning to heal, it's like, yeah, I have to accept that I was the one who killed Joshua. It's okay, like understanding, growing. And it's like, but he's alive. What do you know? I'm just like, what? Fucking stupid. I genuinely hate fake out deaths. And Joshua just didn't do enough interesting things in the story for me to feel like, oh, he's instrumental. I need him here.
I think the part of the issue is I like Joshua as a character. I don't like his motives. Like I don't like that he was hiding for so long. It's like one of those things where the only
Yeah.
reason there's
Yeah,
tension
like,
here is because
why?
he chose not to intervene.
Makes no sense. It's like I feel like
it
you'd want to
does-
see his brother.
Well, it does to an extent because I know I think he knows that he would distract Clive. And he at least in the beginning kind of wanted Clive to do these things without his intervening. So like I understand to an extent, but like he never says that. We kind of have to infer that, and that's the part where it's like it was almost just mysteriousness for mysterious sake. So, but
Yeah,
I
do think there's
still
a
really
lot of
like
things.
Joshua.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of things you may have to infer with the game. It's like that may be one of the weaker ones, but I do think there's some like stronger things you kind of have to infer, that it's more like hinted at rather than said right in front of you.
The hiding very interesting, because this is going to be a deep cut, and if no one's watched Game of Thrones here, they won't understand it. But like,
I'm sorry, real quick. You say deep cut. We're the only ones
I
who
mean,
haven't watched Game of Thrones.
that's what I mean.
You
So
say
like a
that
deep cut here, as in you guys won't understand it. But like,
because it's a pretty popular show. That was just
the
continue.
Jon Snow and Bran is like they're a brother relationship.
Oh
in
my
that show.
God, yes.
And it's Joshua and Clive and like and when you were talking about the hiding, there's like multiple points in that show where they're so close together, but they don't meet up, and their like motives are totally different. And that like I got Game of Thrones vibes heavily with a lot of these characters in Final Fantasy 16.
I guess to go off of that real quick.
Yeah.
Hold on. To go off of that real quick, because I did note this at one point. I thought Cersei and Annabelle are very similar, like kind of evil
Yeah.
mom,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
and then props up their son. So like Olivier and Joffrey. Although obviously Olivier is not like really that much of an asshole. He just is a shithead kid who doesn't really care about anything.
He's just a spoiled brat.
He's possessed.
Well, yeah, that too.
That'll do something to your kid.
And then I thought Dion and Loris Baratheon were really really similar in how they were kind of made up. And then finally Sylvester and Stannis I thought were kind of similar in their like quest for power and reach and stuff. So yeah, there were a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people said they were like, oh, it's just they took a lot of inspiration from Game of Thrones, and a lot of it's not really that true. I think a medieval setting with like supernatural stuff it's like saying everything's a Souls-like nowadays. It's like we really
Yeah.
gotta
Oh,
like
God.
rein in what our comparisons are. But that being said, there
To-
are some very specific Game of Thrones leanings here.
To be fair,
did-
they did say that it's directly influenced by Game of
Yeah,
Thrones.
they said themselves they took
I
inspiration
think
from
it's a
Game of
fair
Thrones.
enough thing to compare it.
Right. I just think like there are some examples that people are using where it's like no.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like there are actual examples of the Game of Thrones influences that we can see.
Yeah, agreed.
You did mention Annabelle, and I just need to say all the homies hate Annabelle.
I
Yeah.
gotta say this about Annabelle: is her death was stupid.
Yeah, my one thing about
I've-
Annabelle is when they
Go ahead, Fuchsia.
like when the boys finally meet their mom again. I hated that entire scene.
That
No.
scene was so
I-
dumb. It was
No,
such a dumb scene.
I think that
You read
scene was like one of them where like Clive is just like, it's like Clive doesn't care, and then Joshua is just like trying to forgive her, and I'm like, bro,
Yeah, what the
that's
hell is
Joshua,
that?
though. That's
This
his
woman
character.
destroyed an entire country, and Josh was like, "Okay, mom, let's go." What the fuck
yeah,
are you doing?
no,
Kill
That's
her.
Joshua's character, though.
Yeah.
That's a
no.
dumb character. No,
No,
I'm sorry. That
I
is
gotta
not
push
right.
back here. That was one of the very few. Like I got super emotional with that scene.
Yeah.
Just like more so on Clive's speech to his mom to be like, "Do
Yeah,
you
that
realize what the fuck you just did?" Like he really did make a point to be like, "What?" Like really just hone in on like, look around us. Look at the desolation and ruin and Bahamut's like running wild outside because of like this plan that you have because you were so short-sighted that like you fucking betrayed your family and stuff, and it was so powerful. I like that scene. I don't know what you guys are
Okay,
talking
here's
about.
the thing.
Star's
Here's the thing. I
performance in
like
that
the scene.
speech was
Go ahead,
immaculate. He
I-
nailed
I-
that.
I think the scene was good up until when she was just like the moment came where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna kill myself instead. Like she just kills herself before
that's
like
where I'm at.
I mean,
That's where I'm at. With
it's
I
that.
think it was
like
just a state of
everything was
shock.
so good, and I'm just like, all right, well, you're gonna have to like at the very least just leave her. But Josh was like, okay, come on, mom, let's go. It's like this, you dumbass.
That's Joshua's
Yeah,
character,
that is
though.
Joshua's
That is
character.
just-
Like, and it's
that
also
is
like,
not-
listen, if that was your mom, like, I don't know, man.
Good riddance.
I would-
It's
My mom
it's,
didn't kill it. My mom did not destroy an entire country. That's all I'm saying.
It's just still your mom, so it's like I don't know, man. Like
No.
there is
But
like
no, okay, but there was no discussion. That's my thing. Joshua
Sure.
didn't want to like go like, oh, like Joshua didn't even really talk to her at all. He just said, "Come on, let's go," before
I think
even confronting her about how she was killed her
think there was-
father. His
there was
father.
a
I
s-
don't know.
I think that was just a discussion for later because there was quite a sense of urgency in that time with everything falling apart
Also
around
true.
them.
It just doesn't. It feels like such a missed opportunity where it feels like I was waiting for that moment where I'm gonna kick Annabelle's ass, and then it's just that's the way it ends.
well, I
Like
think
I
that
think
just
that's
goes to
actually
show how
satisfying.
I think
Okay,
it goes
she
to
took
show
the
how
power,
weak of a
though.
character she actually is. Like
Deep
not
cut.
in a weak as in like a bad character, but like herself, like she wanted all this power, but when she actually comes with like a conflict and it's over, she just kills herself. Like she's actually a total fucking loser.
Yeah. Like the
So.
top power her entire life. She never had
Mhm.
dealt with the
Mhm.
conflict other people are in. I
Yeah,
mean, I guess she found out her other son, the one she's been raising, because she thought Joshua died, was like nothing. Obsessed, gone.
Hey, I mean,
So-
agree to disagree. I mean, I think Fusion, you still with me? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fair to.
I mean,
I
you
understand
guys make
y'all's
points.
viewpoint, but
Yeah.
it just overall doesn't help that the scene in general at the end fell flat on its face, in my opinion. Where
I
everything
just-
up before then was good, but
I think the performance of the characters, everything in that moment was so good, but I thought
Yeah.
I thought we were building to like a pinnacle here, and it just ended flat for me. That entire scene ended flat for me, and I
Agreed,
was just like, okay. Like I thought, like we're in this room, like everything's going on. I'm like, this is the first time they met. Like Annabelle now seeing her two kids that she thought was gone. Like she didn't know Joshua was alive. I felt like she just like didn't even care. Like in the moment, she was just like, yeah. Like I just felt like they could have. They could have aced it so much more, and it's not like it was terrible. Like if that's one of your worst scenes in your game, you have a really good video game.
I don't know. I think she did care because she betrayed the kingdom and all that for a lot of reasons, and
Oh
the
no, we're
major
talking about
strength of that.
Clive and
was
Joshua though. It feels like they barely cared.
Yeah, it felt like
Joshua cared. Clive let go of his connection to his mother before he probably even left.
They
Before
cared
Phoenix
more about
Gate even
Dion
happened,
in that
he didn't
moment than
care.
her.
Yeah, it was
Clive never cared about
weird.
his mother because she didn't care about him. He had no connection to her. He had no reason to care.
Okay, but she was like one of the major people he wanted revenge on, and I understand the whole idea of him like letting go of his decision for a path to revenge because he understands how that could have clouded his judgment. But to see the person that outright destroyed your entire kingdom, killed your father, did all of these heinous things, and him just giving like a little bit of a speech is just
but I
no
think
real anger. I don't get it.
in
It
Clive's
just doesn't make
justification, that is him like getting revenge and like making her like really think about her choices and like her decisions. Like I don't think he's gonna be the type to be like, well, off with your head, but yeah,
Okay, let's move on from this because it's obviously a
Yeah,
circle.
yeah.
I
But
was
also,
about to say this is a really good showcase. Like this is a good discussion
Exactly.
already. If
Yeah.
this is all we're spending all this time on this one
Yeah.
scene.
But
We-
and this is the antithesis of this game is that there are two
Exactly.
completely ideas of the same exact thing and both think they're right, and it's like, yeah, it's all over the place.
What did y'all think of the jail beach scene? We might as well move on to another big character story
Bro
moment.
immediately wanted to move out to the scene where they were both naked. Wow, okay. Bench
I
priorities.
I know that's just another powerful story scene. I think I really liked it.
Yeah, that
And
was
then-
one of my favorite things. I'll give you that.
And then like the fact that Joshua like punched him after that because he's trying to just take everything onto himself and use all his tools and disregarding others. But also they do love each other. And I thought that was just a very good scene. Whole like
That was
sequence
like a very strong scene. I was very happy with it. And I'm like, finally, I got Shiva, and I used Shiva's abilities, and they sucked. So I was like, damn
I
it, now I'm
loved
disappointed. But yeah, no, that was definitely. I agree with Bench. That was one of my favorite scenes.
I do like that
I
scene.
I wish that romance felt like they were weirdly platonic for the entire game,
Yeah.
where it's like, just kiss already. This is
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
ridiculous. There's a scene like around the midway point where they're about to kiss, and like a fucking rom-com, I forgot his name, Gav or some shit. Fucking Gav walks in on them right before they kiss, and I'm like, are we actually doing this like rom-com bullshit?
Yeah, it's like the Little Mermaid where like Kiss the Girl's playing, but Ariel, gets interrupted. It's like, dude, come on,
Exactly.
like what
Just
are we doing
kiss.
here?
It's clear you both like each other. I don't know why they took so long, but like even then, the scene was still great. I just wish it was earlier in the game. That's kind of my thing.
I really like that scene, but I think the side quest with her has a better scene in the flowers. I
There's
don't
a
know.
side
Who
quest
did
with
that.
her?
Yes, there's
Yes.
a big side quest with her, and I thought that scene was done better
I thought it
than
was
the beach
great.
scene.
I don't know if better, but it was pretty darn close. It was great.
I think it was
I
better.
did all the side quests just for reference. I know Fusion did. I don't know about Benji
Yeah,
Wolf
I
or
did.
not.
I did
God knows
the
that.
plus side quests and I did the end game side quests,
Okay.
but I did not
So
do.
I was confused about
most
that.
of
Where was I heard about the end game side quests where it's like these are the best side quests. I didn't know where to find them, so I just gave up and went to beat
It's
the final
really right
boss.
before the final.
So, well,
No,
the
it's
other
there.
thing is though, if you're like me, Wolf, who didn't do them all as you went, you had to do certain things to activate them first, and like
Oh yeah, fuck
they
that.
were either like the third part of a side quest you hadn't done yet, or you had to go do something to trigger it. And it took me way too long to figure out those pieces of information. But yes, that's why you couldn't find it immediately, because I was also confused.
There are two
you know what?
side
That's
quests
what
I'd
YouTube's
like to
for.
touch on. Two side quests I'd like to touch on. One about you're trying to go find this girl's pet and how like demented that is. I'll explain that. Fusion, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, from pretty early on.
Yeah. There's this crime. It just sets up the world because I do think Balestia as a world is very well built out, and its like way of life is very well built out all throughout the game. But like you go to this village that's notoriously known for like being very bad towards bears, and this girl's crying because she lost her pet. You help track it down, and then you find out that the pet was a bear and she succumbed to the curse. And it's just a very she's not like this little girl. It's because how they were. She's what like has to be 5 or 6, maybe 10. I don't know. But to the point where like they're just raised to the point of not even caring. It's like that deeply rooted in their culture to hate and just like not treat bears as human. And I thought that was just heart-wrenchingly awful and very powerful. And then you have the one that like follows it up, where you order. There's this dude that's like making bears go out specifically. Oh yeah, I need to do something to like pretty much lead them to get them killed because he was like a pet beast. And then the quest ends with him getting a new beast and the beast killing him and his son. And I thought both were pretty.
I agree. I think those quests. I think that's when those. I think this game has a lot of meaningless side content, and I mean a lot. There were 76 side quests in this video game, and then you had those few like those where like they had emotion and they had good characters surrounding them, and that's when like I was like, oh, this game's gonna be dark. When I got to those side quests, and like the girl where she has the pet, like you said, and it's actually a bear, and she just like she doesn't care or understand about human life because she just like, okay, I'll get another pet, I'll get another bear, yeah, like I'll get another bear, basically, like we're just gonna keep what dad will get me this, dad will get me that. She doesn't care. It's like that's the moment when like I like that part of the story a lot. I like the dark and grittiness, and I like the stuff about the bears. I know that didn't hit for everyone. I don't know how everyone feels in here, but I know like before the game came out, that was a huge like decisive spot where people were like, I hated the way they dealt with the bears and all this, and like I thought they did it really well.
I thought they nailed it.
Yeah,
this game definitely doesn't have diversity, but for the hard subjects, it handled. I think it nailed it out of the park.
I felt realistic for what they were going for, in my opinion.
And I like this, like I said, Ballast. It feels world. I mean, you're thrust into it, and they have all these things, and it just feels real in what they're going through and everything, how deep rooted it is. And also, you have a task worth fighting for, which helps a lot in the game.
Hey, so we're talking about side quests, right?
Yeah.
Here's my viewpoint on side quests. They're fucking terrible. These are some of the worst side quests I've ever seen in gaming. I genuinely have no idea why they're even in the game. Half of them are boring stories, fetch quests, combat with literally mook enemies that barely even take any damage. I just reached a point where I gave up doing them because all of it just felt like fluff, unneeded trash, in my opinion. It's one of the worst parts of the game, in my opinion. And you say like, hey, there's a couple of side quests that are really good. You know, a couple out of like 72. Like, it's just not.
I wouldn't even say a couple. I'd say like 30 or 40 or.
No, I disagree.
30 or 40.
I wouldn't even say 30 to 40. I'd say about 10. But the thing is, every side quest that is good is about the bears, or about like what happened to the bears, or like is a direct side content to like a main character. So like it feels like a bigger side. Most side stuff, if you go into a town and grab a side content, it's going to be bad. It is a fetch quest that is very random 90% of the time in this game.
And this is Bench. I understand if you say like 30 or 40 are good, then why are there like all these trash ones? Then why do I have to pick up wood for this guy for 10 gil? 10 gil that's not going to get me anywhere.
I know the wood one was like the first side quest you get us, so I think that was a pretty simple one just to like get you into
like
the way.
There's like 30 other side quests like that.
Like there's the one with the dirt too. Let's not forget that.
The dirt, yeah, you're getting the dirt and like.
It's like, dude, come on, like, and that's the part where it's like some of these. It's like, do you really need fucking Clive of all people to go do this? Like,
exactly, it's just so weird. I just my viewpoint is that these side quests are just the length when it actually accepting the side quest takes forever too, because you do this like this whole graphic thing of you accepting the side quest and completing it. It's just, why are you making me wait so long? Just give me the quest. Like, I don't know.
I just got PTSD from that sound you did. You did it really well.
It's not like a waste of time. I gave up on them. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is so unnecessary. And it's like, oh, well, just don't do them. And it's like, yeah, I didn't do them. They're still in the game. They're still a major sour point of the game for me.
That's me, where it's like when I talk about the highs, the side stuff, just like it's one of the things that hinder it so much because I know what good side content looks like. Like we've had plenty of video games now where like, but I'm not saying this is. A lot of games don't have good side content, and like I can't speak for all Final Fantasies, but I just played 7 Remake before this, and I was very similar where I'm like, half the side content I would have just don't give me it. Like I don't care about your fetch quest. I don't care about like these one-off things. Yes. Like we don't care as gamers. We have got to the point where like we do not care about those things. You're just adding hours onto your game so you can say your game is longer and larger, and we do not care. Or like we've been over it for the last decade. Yeah, Ubisoft and their method like has started it, but it's like you can't like I know Bink says he likes them and that's fine, but like if you just stand back for a second and actually look at the content of the side compared to a lot of other video games, it's just it's not even comparable. Like even if there's 2 to 3 really, really good ones, which I think there are, there's not 30. There's probably 10 or 15 good ones and like a few that are like fantastic that I'll remember forever. You don't need 76 of them. There is 76 side
Exactly.
quests on a game that has 68 main quests. Like you're just filling things to fill things at that point.
Yeah, that's the problem too, is that even with this statement, it's like, yeah, some of the side quests are bad, but there's some really good ones. That statement inherently means like, yeah, you're gonna have to go through some really bad ones,
Yeah.
but don't worry, you'll get a good one every once in a while.
You
It's like,
have to look for the good ones. Why
right,
do I
you
have
either
to do that?
yeah, you either have to look it up or you have to just trudge through it. And I feel like that's and granted, it's optional, and I was the person who looked them up and did the ones that like I wanted to do or sounds interesting, and it's like that's not a great way to play a video game. But real quick, I did want to point out one thing that's kind of tangentially related to side content, and that is the main missions that felt like side content.
There we go. I wanted to
Because
talk
Well,
about
wait,
this too.
this is
Wait.
my what?
I was gonna say before you we go about this. Do you want to briefly talk about hunts?
Okay,
Just so
yeah,
we like.
No. Well, let's talk about these main quests because these are also part of side quests. We'll talk about hunts in a second, but I want to get the
Okay.
negative out of the way.
Is mid about to
Benji,
get
please go
roasted?
first because I'm gonna fucking yell.
Yeah, no, this is easily my biggest complaint with the game because it goes into like another like 1A and 1B, which is pacing. Like I understand that you cannot just give me a game where it's icon fight after icon fight after icon fight. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be like it. I understand there needs to be a balance here, but it is so frustrating in this game when because I'm not even talking about the I know a lot of people reference mid and building the
Oh god.
the airship, which sure that was also bad, but that one actually is right after an icon fight, and that does pacing wise kind of make a little bit more sense to have like some load some cooldown time for the next big thing. My issue is I think it happens. It happens before the first Mother Crystal. It happens actually when you're going back to Rosaria. I want to say it happens 3 or 4 times where you're like you are on your way to a big mission that feels powerful and it's building and it's growing, and it's like, oh, here's an arbitrary roadblock that we are
Yep.
just going to put up for absolutely zero reason. We are now going to completely detour you. You're going to have to go talk to these people that ultimately do not impact the story that much. They do not offer world building compared to stuff like the side quest, and you're going to waste like 30 minutes. You're going to like the it's not like anything meaningful or memorable. Oh, okay, now you can go back to the stuff you're doing. It's like, why? Like, just let me skip that. If I really want to sit down in this town and like really discover this stuff, I don't understand why
Let it
that
be
wasn't.
optional.
Yeah, I don't. You keep it in the game, but the fact that it wasn't optional drove me up a wall because those were easily the lowest points of the game for me.
This was my breaking point. I was in the desert town, one of them, I forget the name, but we were leaving the town, and I'm like, I can't wait to fight Titan. Here we go. I'm about to fight Titan. And then they were like, oh, the guards are guarding the gate. They're not going to let anyone pass. Just go kick their asses. We have kicked so many guards' asses up to this point, but these two guys, no, we can't fight them. We have to go talk to the town shaman or whatever the fuck. I don't know. I skipped all the cutscenes because I didn't give a shit about this stupid ass quest where I talked to this dude and he was like, oh, go talk to this guy, and then talk to that guy, fight a couple of enemies that die in
guy's
like 2
actually a
hits.
great
All this
character.
bullshit. I don't even care if he's a great character. I don't want to talk to him. He's not interesting to me.
You want to go fight Titan?
Yeah, I do agree.
I want
They
to go
kind of
fight
like
Titan.
they add things into like multiple times where like you're just adding something that would never be a roadblock ever to Clive. Like this dude would just walk past, or like this dude would just like say move over, or like something where it's just they wanted to add like I felt like they tried to do it so they could build up the worlds and the towns you were in, but it didn't work for me. And it seems like it didn't work for most of
Exactly.
us here. Where like it made us more annoyed that we were like because I thought the actual main story of this game was done really well and the writing was fantastic. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
you're throwing all this stuff at me that I don't like. I just want to focus on this story because the rest of your game, it's like you want it to be so linear, and then you take me out of those linear moments for these little hubs that are just not good. Like they're not like God of War type hubs. They're just like, I don't know, like they're if they were God of War level hubs, they would feel better, but they're just not. The exploration in this game is pretty poor.
Yeah, it
I
didn't
thought
feel all the way fleshed out either. And real quick, just to go back to the what Wolf was talking about with the desert town. In the first town, it's the bridge is broken. Clive made a bigger jump later in the game
Dude,
than
that
the gap of
bridge,
that
bro.
bridge. I don't want to
Are
fucking
you
hear
kidding
it.
me? I couldn't jump that? Are you telling me I couldn't jump 2 feet? I was losing my mind, dude.
And then later in the game, when Goots gets pickpocketed, it's like that's like the
Oh
most
my
fucking
God.
egregious trope, a child pickpocketer. Wow, I've never heard of a story with a child pickpocketer who has to learn a morality lesson early on in his life. Like, give me a break. Sorry.
And those all drag. They drag. They're
Yeah,
not
they
quick.
do.
They
That's it.
all drag.
I think
If I could
the
at least like, sorry, one more thing. If I could have at least just like had, if I go to the guy and it just says skip cutscene, I could skip the cutscene and all of that gone. I wouldn't be complaining that much. But I still have to go back and forth and talk to all these people I just don't care about. Go ahead, Bench.
I think the mid ship building quest is the only like content side like thing that actually like felt like a slog to me. But also, I know Wolf hates Mid, but I actually like Mid as a character. I thought she was pretty good.
We can
She
talk
was
about
fine.
that
Her
all day.
voice was just jarring.
I just, man, every time she was on screen, my day was worse. I
My
just
point
skipped
with
all her dialogue.
that point with my mission is like they knew that mission was bad because they do the little joke at the end where they're like, "Oh, we need 3
Yeah.
more." Like you knew
Why do
you
they
just
do
went through
that?
like an hour of just total boringness, and then Min makes a joke where she's like, "Well, we need 3 more," and then they're like, "Oh, don't worry, you don't have to do it." Like you knew what you were doing, Des.
You
You
know
knew this was
it's
just
Yeah.
dumb.
bad. I don't get it. Don't make a joke and say, everything's all right. Like, no, you know it's bad. Just take it out of the game. We don't need this stuff.
And I think that this is like where you can tell this is a team that worked on Final Fantasy 14 because
Oh, yeah.
this definitely feels like that MMO kind of grind that personally I'm not a fan of. Go figure. And it kind of came out here, which is I'm sure some people didn't mind it. I think Bench probably didn't out of the 4 of us, but yeah, it just ruined I think if they either made it optional or put it in different spots, because again, the mid stuff wasn't even that bad because it was like a cooldown period where it's like, oh, I just had this epic fight. Okay, like sure, I'll go do side stuff for a while because I need to like stew on this. But when you're like trying to build up to a big thing, it's like it's like that's where it just like why?
That's like near the right before you fight Ultima at the very end, they give you like 17 side quests. It's like you're
Right? Yeah,
building up to
that
this
too.
gigantic thing where you're like, okay, I just want to
Jesus.
get this done. Let me throw it. And they're like, no, you're going to spend the next 10 hours doing these meaningless side content. Like
Yeah.
that was when I was like, dude, I should have been over my side content at this point. Like I'm at the pinnacle of your game. I'm about to fight the boss. Like
What was y'all's final playtime for the game? Mine was 68 hours.
I don't know.
I think
Mine
I
was-
forgot to check.
That
It
was
was
like
in the-
45 to 50 for me.
mine was in the 60s. I don't know. I think 64.
I could check real quick. But I guess Bench was alluding to this earlier, but hunts, that was definitely something that I know a lot of us really enjoyed. This is one of my favorite parts of the game. I love the hunts, especially
hunts
the
were
S tier
great.
ones. The S tier
Yeah,
hunts were probably my favorite part of the game, unironically. Like the one, who was the
The
guy with the big
dragons?
sword? The dragon was sick too, but what was the guy? The first S tier hunt. I forget his name.
Atlas.
Yeah, Atlas. I love that boss fight.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of my
It was
favorite
very
boss
good.
fights. We'll talk about it more when we get to combat, but what I loved about Atlas was that it was actually challenging. Same with the dragon and a couple of the other S tier hunts. And they felt like I was really utilizing all the combat skills I learned up to that point.
Yeah.
No, I definitely like my favorite part too about the hunts, they don't tell you where they are. You actually have to like go and like use
Yeah.
clues and pinpoint where on the map. I was actually shocked at this point where I was like, oh wow, they're not like holding my hand or giving me a waypoint or anything. I actually kind of like this.
Or you can look them up on Google.
Well, yeah, but
I'm
It's
a
like-
dumb guy. I had to look it up. I was too stupid for that stuff.
What about I guess should we just transition to like combat and boss fights, and we can talk about the ending in its own
We can
segment, like
talk
the final.
well,
Hold
ending
on.
is at the end, Bench. Let's calm down.
Yeah.
But like we still have more stuff on
My one
Hunts.
thing about
Is-
hunts that I'll say
yeah,
is like
go ahead, Fusion.
this is where I'm the only one here that's gonna be like, I didn't care that much about hunts. Like I thought they were cool, but I thought they weren't done well enough for me to care. Where I'm like,
Off the podcast.
where it's not
No, I'm
like
kidding.
I guess it's hard to compare because like when I was thinking of the hunt board, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be like Witcher contracts, like in
That's
The
fair.
Witcher and like Geralt, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be super cool, and I'm like, no, it's just me going to some spot on the map, killing an enemy that 90% of the time not as hard as the rest of any enemy in your game, and walking away. Like that was the
That's
hunt
fair.
for me. Like they didn't feel, and I guess that's gonna be all JRPGs probably, and like at least everyone I've experienced, I think it's a little weird where they just throw the enemies like in your world, like you're walking around this world and you can just see the enemies all scattered, like they're just floating around, and like the hunts were basically just placed on the map, and you just go there, and like there's no cutscene, there's nothing cool about it. You just like you show up, a thing pops up on your screen that shows you're in a hunt. You get an A, S, B, whatever the letter is, and then you kill it in 4 minutes and you walk away. That's how I took the hunts.
I think it's I agree with you to an extent to like up to the B tier and like some of the A tier hunts in terms of all that, but I do genuinely think the S tier hunts were really strong, fun boss fights. But I
They were
understand where
hard.
you're coming from.
And there
Oh,
probably didn't need to be. There was 26 of them.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah, there
another
were
thing
way
with this
too many
game. Is
hunts.
just like,
No, there's like 32.
okay, maybe
Yeah, there's
there's
32. There
probably,
was a
I just
pack of
maybe there's
dogs
more,
as
but
one
like
of them. I was like, why am I fighting a pack of dogs?
it's just another thing of with this game and with not with a lot of modern games where it's just like all this would just feel so much better if it was just a little less. It's one of those things where it's like
Yeah.
less is more in a lot of these situations with Final Fantasy. So it's like just give us a little bit less of what you're getting. Like we don't need the C tier fights, just give us more S tier stuff. Like you know,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
like,
We say all this, but we're all very excited for our 1,000 planets in Starfield. So.
Oh, you're goddamn right. All right. No, I can put on my Starfield hat whatever I want. That's completely different. Real quick though, before we transition, I do want to be a little bit positive in the side quest field, because we didn't really talk about some of the more end game ones. The Torgal side
yeah.
quest.
There was a Torgal one?
Oh my
Yes.
god,
Oh,
Wolf, it's
my.
so
That's such-
good.
now
Go
I
watch the
gotta look that
cutscene or
up. I'll
something.
do
It's
Torgal's my
like
boy.
that was one of the other moments that like legitimately choked me up. I'm like, this is this is really good.
The Torgal one and the Gav one are the ones I felt like the most emotion towards. Because Gav
I
is
can
just
do
like the
more
brother.
without
Like
Gav.
Gav is so he like in the cheers, like Gav is so good, and then towards like the end he like becomes like a surrogate father kind of thing, and I thought
Mhm.
he's just so good.
Yeah,
And
the Gav one was good.
while we're being positive on it, because this is obviously this is all great stuff. But this is also the issue. You have like these 5 to 6 quests that like people like Wolf
Why
will
are they
miss
at the end?
because the rest of the quests are so bad that people are going to skip these other ones because they don't know how to activate them or get to them, or you know what I mean. Like these should
Sure.
just
Yeah.
be like the standard for your game. You're throwing these, which are fantastic quests, but like 90% of your fan base, maybe not, but like a large part is just they're not going to see any of this part of your video game.
The fact that I haven't seen them says a lot because I made sure to like look at all the side quests. It's like, where are these like really good quests? And I couldn't find them because apparently I didn't do the quest a bone to pick. Oh man, I'm sorry I missed out on that one.
Hey,
But yeah,
Wolf,
no,
real quick.
go for it.
Did you ever find Ambrosia?
Ambrosia.
Oh no!
So you never had a chocobo the entire time?
Oh no! I did the plus.
Okay.
quest. I did the
Okay.
plus. Yeah, the chocobo. Yeah, that
was
helped me.
gonna
That
say-
saved my sanity.
That would have been so funny if you just went the entire game.
Well, the fact I will say I'm really glad that they mark the actual like important side quests with pluses. I really
Sure.
appreciate that. The actual
That's
quests
from
weren't
Final
that
Fantasy
interesting,
14.
other than the chocobo one. That was my boy. I love that chocobo so much. He was my boy throughout
The
that.
eye
game.
patch is so cool.
He's such a
Yes.
badass.
Yes.
But I guess Bench, we did want to transition into combat. I have a lot to say about this combat. Fusion, you had some thoughts about the combat. I think we actually share kind of the same sentiment. So I'd like you to go first.
Yeah, I think the foundation of this combat is really nice and it feels really good. But there was just a lot of issue with me where, like, for one, I think this game is entirely too easy. And like I'm all for
Yeah.
people like having more opportunities for everyone to play it. Like I understand the whole thing about difficulty, and that's like a topic in video game that's very decisive. But like in this game where it's like you could genuinely almost mash the same button and just kill everything you touch in this game is like
Genuinely, yep.
there's times where I've said it before where I could scroll Twitter on one hand and still fight a boss.
Hey, it's
That's
not
how I
Twitter now.
fought a
It's
lot of the
X.
bosses. I'm not even joking.
But it
I was just
also
like,
comes
nah, this
it
is
comes back to like the combat is so good and fleshed out, and the abilities, the icon abilities, like when you chain them, it feels so
yeah.
good. But the health pulls on these enemies are like it's insane. I'm sitting there fighting enemies for so long.
They're
When it's like
so
you're not
large, and they're not giving me enough challenge to
exactly. They're
really
not
go.
giving no challenge back for me to stay engaged in this 20-minute fight. Like if you're going to at
Exactly.
least engage me where it's like, okay, I have to think about what your next attack is or what I should do. Should I heal now? Should I use this now? I don't have to think of any of that. I just have to wait for my next icon to refresh, hit it with that move again, and repeat for 20 minutes.
Some of
I
the
think
enemies' AI is genuinely laughable. Like I recorded a clip. I wish I shared it, where it was like a random night, and I'm like, what if I just don't attack him? What if I just sit here for 30 seconds without attacking? My man was perplexed. He had no idea what to do against me. So he
Yeah.
just sat there attacking, like Torgal hit him a couple times. I was like, what is happening? Why isn't he fighting me?
I think the combat is very, very good, and I always loved getting to a fight. It was always satisfying. However, I did think the fact that you get an icon power and it just doesn't hit with like it doesn't fit into the rotation can always like wasn't the best feeling because you did just get a new power, but you're not the biggest fan of it.
Yeah, I agree there with you too. Where like some of the, especially late game, some of the late game icon powers, I'm like, this
Oh,
is useless to me. Like I would just
I
sit here
did
and use
like
the Phoenix.
Fusion. I did like Odin and Shiva's powers a lot, but like some of the ones in between there, like you'd think Bahamut would be epic, but I mean, not really.
Dude,
Yeah.
Bahamut was so useless power wise. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
And the combat
Um,
feels good. Like it feels like when you connect with hits, it feels really good. And like the animations are fantastic. And like the particle effects, like they have a lot of the like showcase of the combat itself is like really good and high quality stuff. Like obviously Devil May Cry, like you know what I mean? Like it's gonna be high quality.
you mentioned it. The Devil May Cry combat director produced this, made the combat for this game, and he said this game is his masterpiece. That is a lie. Devil May Cry 5 has the best combat in arguably all of gaming. But yeah, continue, Fusion.
Well, yes, and I've never played the games, but I always heard that Devil May Cry is good. But yeah, it's like and just I don't know if it was just me. I felt like the enemy variety was lacking a lot in this game. And it's like I get like you know like there's so much they want to
Yeah.
do. Like you're in a medieval world, so everything's like gonna be knights or like basically the same stuff. But like every combat I kind of felt like, especially mainline story wise, which I understand they can't like do a lot with the story like in enemy variety, but I felt like it was the same waves of the exact same enemies over and over and over again.
I mean, even you say like you can't do a lot, but like even night wise, like I feel like they could have done so much more. Like have more archers, maybe one with a crossbow, like more of those brigadiers. Like there was like that guy with a cannon. Why are there only like two of those guys
Oh
in the whole
yeah,
game?
yeah.
Like why don't I get to fight more of them? It's just a strange thing where like any enemy with a stagger bar was more enjoyable for me to fight because if they didn't have a stagger bar, then their AI was probably at the bottom of the barrel and I could just spam square and get away with it.
I think part of the problem too is that the AI actually is the issue here and not necessarily the enemy variety, because I think I think the enemy variety was actually pretty good. The problem is they all did the same thing. And like and I will say, well, if I remember when I first got Titan and I was trying to like do the parries and I was just waiting for the low level like grunts or whatever to like actually hit me, and it's like, are you guys?
And they
Am
never
I going to be able to parry? Am I going to be able to parry? No. Okay, I guess I'll just use my other moves. Like fuck you. It was and to go back to kind of the like difficulty and all that. When I played the demo, I played what are the two
Action
quote
and
unquote
story.
yes. Okay, so I played on action in the demo, and it's like, okay, The only thing that I feel like, I feel like the fights are me doing the same thing and the bosses doing the same thing. I just have to do it over and over and over again.
Yep.
So if I move it down to story mode and I do the same exact thing, but just like 1 or 2 less like cycles,
Stagger
I'm okay
bars.
with that. Right? Yeah. Where it's like, maybe I only have to stagger them twice instead of 3 times. It's like, just let me do that, because I don't think that, I don't want to deal with, just doing the repetition of it all. It's like, okay, clearly I have my combos and they're gonna work. It's just the game is arbitrarily so spongy that it doesn't feel satisfying at times. So I honestly put it on story mode and I just had a super fun time with it.
I respect that, because I played on action, but there were times where I'm like, I should just put this on story and just like not even like the amount of staggering you're doing. And granted, I played Final Fantasy VII Remake like 2 months before this game came out, and that combat system is so good. Like, it's fantastic, to the point where I'm like, dude, they should have just done that. Like, just every new Final Fantasy should just have that system, because that system feels so good. But that's besides the point.
I
They're
do
just
want to
like,
talk. Go ahead, Fusion. Sorry.
they're just like the sponge enemies, and it's like I get a lot of flack in here, especially from Binks, when I talk about I do not want boss fights, and like, okay, boss fights are one thing, but I don't want my casual enemy to take me 20 minutes. And like,
Right.
That's
every
fair.
JRPG I've played to this point, it seems like it's a trope. I don't know if like that's just me coming from it, where it's like
There's a couple that like you can
I
get through them pretty quickly,
I've
but
played
I
a
get.
decent amount now, and like almost all of them, it's like, dude, these you're just like you're putting these health pools on these enemies so high for no reason. I don't know if it's to add hours to your game. I don't know. I just like I would rather your boss like me have to think about dodging and what abilities they're gonna use, and not me just how many times am I going to have to hit them with the same moves over and
Right.
over again.
That's fair. I do. I do. Oh, go ahead, Benji.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know if you're gonna get to this, Wolf. We kind of touched on it. What were everyone's like rotation of icon abilities?
Oh yeah, I wanted to mention that. What's it called? It was Ifrit, Garuda, and what was that? A Titan for pretty much 90% of the game, and then I got Odin, and I just kind of got the thing where you could put it onto any icon. So I kept Ifrit, but I got one of Odin's abilities on it. But yeah, I was pretty happy with my main trio.
I'm surprised you didn't like Shiva, because like I don't Shiva
Because
has one really good
and he
ability, the
has
ice.
ice powers.
The
It's
ice
so
blizzard is so good though. The ice
Yeah,
blizzard, like
that's
the
so good.
stagger damage you do. I don't know how you guys set it up, but every single
No.
one, I set up mine so it's like in every 3 categories I had one really super powerful one, and then
Yeah,
one like
same.
basic cooldown one. And I would like spam that rotation, and I never had a single like I think it took 30 hours before I even died in this game. Like, it was just
I
like
just
you just spam the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah,
I
my
just chose whatever gave
rotation.
me a parry.
Mine was Phoenix, Titan, and Odin at the end. And I did have the Shiva like ice thing to like mega stagger people in there as well.
Yeah, I did. I was Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan, and then I swapped Garuda for Odin at the end because holy shit! What was the name of that sword?
I don't know, but it's so fun.
It was so busted. Oh my goodness! But it was, I think I got in a rotation where, I would, especially once I got Titan, I would just counter with
Same.
with the circle ability and just punch back a little bit. And then I think the Garuda, there was the counter that she had. Yeah,
My baby. I love
right,
that thing.
and that did a lot of stagger damage. And then I the first thing I really did was I tried to upgrade the was it Power of the Phoenix, whatever the like the one where he kind of time stops and he like bursts out in flame. I forget, it's Ifrit's ability. Or maybe it's the Phoenix's ability. It's like the ultimate in his, but there's like a second stage, and when you're in stagger, it just does a stupid amount of damage. So at the end of the game, when I have that, I have the upgraded Titan Punch, and I have the Odin ability that also stops time and does a shit ton of damage. Like, I was almost one-shotting some of these bosses.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about boss fights then?
Well, no, before we get there, one more thing on combat. I need to
I had a
talk about
perfect
these
segue,
controls.
Wolf. You ruined it.
I need to talk about these controls.
Okay.
What were they thinking? What were they thinking? Who in the studio was like, yo, guys, R1 for dodge, L1 for lock on. In what game is that the fucking standard? I need to know why those were the default controls. And then I always get, they changed it after launch. Why wasn't it there at launch? Why isn't it at the launch of the game? I have to dodge with R1. And by the time they actually like allowed you to change it with the different what's it called, control schemes, like the types, I already got used to it.
Yeah,
And
you were
even
locked
then,
in.
yeah, and even then, I got to the final boss, and I'm like, oh man, let me dodge. And my stupid Souls brain pressed circle to dodge because in every
Nice.
other video game, it's circle. And then you get this game where it's R1. I don't get it. Why?
I will say so I have modded my DualSense to have back paddles on them, and that
So
was the
smart.
first thing I did was I usually have dodge on there anyway, so I was like, oh, this is perfect. I don't even care about this stupid control scheme because it's gonna be the same button for me no matter what. So I was able to bypass that, but yeah, I agree. It was a little silly. I'm surprised they got that change out so fast after launch, but they couldn't do it between the demo and the launch.
And they talked a lot about how the game was ready and it won't require a patch, which it did require a patch. But they talked about all this, but then they were like,
I
"Oh
mean,
man, but we can't have you change the controls. That's a tough
I
one."
do think the game wasn't a ready state. I know Fusion has FPS issues, but I did play on quality mode. But like compared to the other stuff we've seen this year, this is definitely a
No,
complete in-box game.
I'm not saying it's not complete. I'm just saying it's kind of weird to say your game is complete, but you don't allow alternate control schemes at launch.
I mean, I
That's
think in
all.
an
That's
interview
what
they
I'm
even mentioned they didn't even think about it until then.
saying. How do
Yeah,
you
but
not?
it
I
Think
think they
was
did
every
say
other
that.
game does that.
yeah. That I mean, I understand they can say that, but that's
Yeah.
not a good
It's.
thing to say.
And I
I
will
think it's
say,
a fair criticism.
I'll give this game props for like, I don't 60 something hours. I didn't run into a single bug or a single glitch.
Yeah,
But
that's.
I'm going to say, like I've said for months now, the frame rate was unacceptable at times. Like I don't care. It wasn't as bad as Jedi Survivor, which I just played, but like I don't like I understand we're in this whole FPS spiel like going all over in gaming where it's like we just want 60 FPS and we want it to work, and half the time it's not working in the modern games. But like I just want like this game. There was this time where I'm like I could just feel my PlayStation chugging somehow.
It wasn't
Like,
even during the boss
Which,
fights either.
wait,
it
which
wasn't
That's
during
mode
the
did
boss
you
fight.
use?
I used performance.
Okay.
same here.
I
So
had a
like
lock 30, no hitches, nothing.
yeah, I
Yeah, I was
understand
gonna.
quality was pretty good, but like I just can't do 30
Yeah,
FPS.
we want to play on 60 FPS.
It,
That's the thing.
it
For
was the
those
same
people,
thing
Benji.
with the demo where I played it on performance. I'm like, oh, this is awful. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
do
yeah.
quality. And I did watch the Digital
Smart.
Foundry video, and I thought it was interesting that quality was stable. It looked awesome. However, I would say like the last 20% of the game, I did get a couple hitches even on quality mode. That I was like, oh, that's
We were
weird.
playing at 12 FPS.
Yeah, it was just like hitches. It wasn't anything like it wasn't chugging or anything, but there was a couple times like, whoa, I haven't seen anything the whole game, and now all of a sudden it's a little bit of an issue. But it goes back to, especially because I played this so close to Breath of the Wild, where it's like, oh, or sorry, Tears of the Kingdom, where it's like, okay, listen, I can still play a game at 30 FPS. I think some of this conversation is totally overblown. As long as you like get in that mindset of 30 and you've been watching it for a while, I think your eyes can adjust. And I had a great time playing this game. I would much rather like force myself to play a stable 30 FPS and like get used to it again rather than like the kind of unacceptable performance mode.
I just can't see the difference between 30 and 60.
We
So.
know.
Yeah, come on, buddy. I will say I didn't have as many hitches as Fusion did, at least from what he's been told me in the past.
Fusion might just have a
But
faulty PS5 at this point.
No, because
no,
I've seen. I think I'm that dude that like takes it more serious than most people. Like I want
Yeah.
my game to run at a smooth 60 FPS, and when like I notice it, and I see like Bench doesn't notice it, and a lot of people don't notice it, and that's fine. It's just like the way I play games, I immediately notice when something's not running smooth, and like. The weird thing with Final Fantasy, it's the only game ever where the combat was lock 60. Like the
yeah,
big
I was
boss
about to say
battles
that.
are lock
That's what I
60
wanted to mention.
FPS. Every particle on the screen, lock 60. The minute the boss battle ends and I'm going to loot something, my PlayStation's chugging. I'm like, how is this possible? Like when I'm in the,
You know, well, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you
it's like
finish.
I assume it's because the way they had combat encounters, you would get thrown into a combat encounter and then you wouldn't be able to leave it. Like they would give you this space, kind of like the small arena where you would fight this enemy. You would fight the enemies in this low arena, and I assume that took all the processing like away from the background. You didn't have to load the background of the map, and then they would throw you right into the open world where now you're loading everything, and the game couldn't handle that because I was walking casually, I would drop frames, but every single combat encounter it was smooth 60 FPS. I'm like, why didn't like I don't understand how that happened because usually in games it's like you get into those combat encounters and that's when the FPS starts dropping.
So from what I remember from the Digital Foundry video, the main reason they could achieve a lock 60 is because a lot of the times during combat, one, I think you have a good point with the arena where it kind of shrinks like what they're actually like processing and focusing on, and it's a much smaller range than the open world. But they said that it drops down to 720p a lot during combat, and so I think it's like, well, you could have gone 60 FPS if the whole game was 720p, but it's like, are we really doing a 720p video game in 2023? No.
That makes sense. I definitely haven't watched that video because you could get away with like the 720p combat encounters because you're not focused on graphics in the middle of a combat.
Right,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, and all the particles they use and everything else, it still looks really pretty. So that makes a lot of sense where they just drop that resolution down completely, and they're like, okay, we're getting this 60, and then the minute you load back in, they're like, okay, back to 4K, like back to seeing what the game was supposed to look like.
I will say it was very impressive that a lot of those boss fights were at 60 FPS.
Yes,
And speaking of boss fights, I want to talk about these icon fights. See, Bench, I can do transitions. we have a lot of thoughts on the icon fights. I guess, Bench, you really want to talk about these? Let's talk about them.
I guess we can save the best for last, right?
Depends what we all think was the best.
I guess. No, there's no
What?
way.
No, he's right. He's right.
No, Bahamut is
What
not
are
the
you
best
on?
one. It's not the best one. It's a good one, but come on.
What?
Guys, okay. Let me point this out. It is a very spectacle fight. It is very pretty, but that shit's easy, man. All right, the best one is probably the best one is the final boss.
No, I disagree.
Nah, final boss is great. I'd put it at second place, but Bahamut is incredible.
I think Bahamut is overhyped. The Bahamut fight is very epic. It looks very good, but it's easy. Come on. The final boss is actually somewhat challenging.
Final boss also had weird pacing in my opinion.
I don't like. I think the final boss was underwhelming.
Yeah, it felt weird at times.
Wow. Okay, this is not the hill I expected to die on, but
I mean,
right.
my favorite boss is not gonna. My favorite boss is a very random one that, like, I don't think it's the best boss in the game, but my favorite is when you fight Hugo when he's in human form.
That was
a one-on-one. That's a very good fight. Where you're like you're falling through the floor, like, and the whole entire intro feels like a Souls intro, where like you're walking up to him, and he's talking about how, like, talking about Benedicta, and he's like,
it should have been me.
The performance of a lifetime, like, that's my personal favorite because it just felt so raw and like real. And it was like like you're not icons, you're just two dudes that are just going at it.
The end of that fight is so stupid though.
Barnabas and the Hugo fights, I liked both of those a lot because of it wasn't like icons battling, it was people battling. It was a clash between Clive and that character, and especially for Barnabas, it was kind of like two opposing kind of things.
Benedicta too, right?
Yeah, Benedicta as well.
Benedicta had a semi-prime fight as well. Yeah, Barnabas. Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on him later. But that boss fight was probably also one of my favorites as well. I thought that actually.
I also thought it was challenging. I mean, you had to use all your stuff to really
it was
break them down.
It felt like about the ocean, right?
No, not the ocean. That was like a forced loss boss fight. I hate that shit.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Raw. Yeah, that was raw. When he cut the ocean in half.
Yeah, it looked cool, but that whole fight pissed me off. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about that one.
Oh, we'll talk a lot more about that later.
we're talking about at the top of the tower.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
I just thought that between Clive as someone whose will is so strong, and then Barnabas, someone who gave his will up long ago, I just thought it was satisfying. And then he just loses it at the end. That was amazing.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on Barnabas, but like the actual fight was very strong.
I mean, the Bahamut though, like, you fight him and then you like beat the fight, and it's already the music's some of like the best tracks I've ever heard. It's like all going together, and then you think you finish, and then you just go to fucking base. You can't.
I think it's the best looking fight of like
Yeah,
in a
but come
while.
on, guys.
Like,
Gameplay
visually, it's
wise,
very good.
like that's.
Well, the
I think
gameplay.
people are
If it
overhyping
risen,
it.
if it
it's
risen
so-
was so fun.
But Wolf, at the same time, like this game is clearly not about like at this point in the game, you've realized like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's not
this
a
is
Souls.
not a combat game. This
No,
is a spectacle game, and
I
I think it
understand
does the spectacle great.
I understand that, but I also had like the actual, as Fusion mentioned, the Hugo Kupka fight. That fight was genuinely difficult. I was having trouble with it. I'm like, oh, maybe this is a sign to come. And then there was that fight before, the Titan fight. Man, I want you guys to know, I was so excited for the Titan fight. I'm like, this fight's gonna fucking rock, bro. That fight sucked. That
loved
was
it.
one of the worst in the game. Oh my
No,
god,
I loved it.
I
I lost. So cool. And then he comes out after that. You think it's over, and then like the chorus hits.
You fight him while falling. I was like, you're falling and you're still fighting. I'm like, what is this? This is
Yeah.
so dumb.
It lost a lot of steam for me at the end, or like when he goes in like his Super Titan form, and you're kind of like parkouring up to him, like that it overstayed its welcome, and then towards the end, I'm like, okay, this is going too long.
The music was pretty cool.
So good.
It was so
good.
I was laughing my ass off because I'm like, this is so out of place, but I kind of love it. It works.
Yeah. And then back with the Bahamut fight, I like the Phoenix transition as well. Whenever you're like the Phoenix theme hits, and then you're just flying around. That's just
when
amazing.
they like it was like the first time they really fought together, and I think that like kind of had some significance there, where it's like the two fire icon or two fire dominants are joining forces, and they're brothers, and I think it just goes into the emotion, especially with the scene that we just had that we talked about earlier. Like all of that together. Shut up. All of that together, I think really just. And I posted the screenshot in our Discord, but it's so funny. It's both Joshua and Phoenix, like their little fireball versus the giant flare the mega flare that Bahamut sends, and it's just such a cool picture because if you told someone it was Final Fantasy, if you told someone it was a Final Fantasy 16 screenshot, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
The mega flare, I mean the Zeta flare though, that was
I was about to say, isn't that like the second ever time Zeta flare's been used? The first time by Donald Duck.
Yep. It's the strongest
I think about that a lot. How Donald, I know this isn't a Kingdom Hearts spoiler cast, but why was Donald Duck the first ever character to use Zeta Flare? I just think about that a lot.
Got it, like
that's fair.
And that fight just like showed how powerful Bahamut was. Where like it was just like you had to use it. Like they were using everything. They're just praying at the end. They're like, can we even beat them? Like,
it wasn't a playable fight, but the fight between Bahamut and Odin. That was so cool.
Yeah, I wish we got more of that. That was very cool.
Like that's the first time where you kind of see that what these icons really are. They're treated as like nuclear weapons. They're like the nation's like main weapon that they send out, and then like everyone stops fighting as well. It's like they're all like cheering on their icon and not even bothering about the enemy to their side. It's so cool to see.
And I think going from Bahamut, like Dion as a character, I thought like had a really good character arc near the end of that game. Where like I was like, he just like the way they built that character up, like felt so good in the end.
Yeah, and I appreciate a lot. He had a relationship with another man, and I thought that was really well done. I really appreciated that relationship.
And it wasn't like shoved in there.
Yeah, exactly. Like I saw criticism that like it didn't go far enough, but it's like I don't know what else you want them to do. Like they very clearly love each other. Like this is a very strong relationship. So that's kind of my viewpoint. I really love Dion as well. He was definitely one of the highlights of the game.
Dragoons are always cool.
Oh yeah, Dragoons are just the best, man. Especially fighting them in this game, they're really fun.
Yeah,
fights.
like in the forest whenever you're going to save Gavin, the one drops down and that was fun.
I guess to point out the other icon fights, Ifrit and Garuda, I thought those were both really strong as well.
The Garuda one I think is honestly underrated because
just get so much more.
That one is awesome.
we
I
didn't
love
talk about it in the character section, but I think Benedicta, honestly, I was kind of sad that she ended up dying because
Yeah, Sam.
she had a really, really interesting story and like the conflict that that she dealt with, and I know it
Yeah.
sets up like Barnabas and Hugo later, but I really liked her story and kind of her internal struggle and what she was trying to
Mhm.
do, and I thought it was, and the fight itself is also just like awesome.
It was like sumo wrestling match, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty epic.
Then the
and
typhoon fight was also cool.
Yes.
It's when you get like full mobility.
It's when you get sucked in after the first mother crystal, and it's like that
Oh,
weird techno music starts playing.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, hey, the fact that I completely forgot about that fight kind of says what my opinion on it was.
It's when you
a
get
cool
like
fight,
full
though.
mobility control.
It was
of
fine, but it's just like
Ifrit.
it's kind of forgettable. I will
And
say
I-
I did. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I wanted to point out into the Ifrit fight that was a great character moment for Clive, and in
Yeah.
general of him like kind of accepting that revenge is not the path, like accepting that he was the one who killed Joshua and wanting to go more on a path of recovery rather than like succumbing to revenge. I genuinely thought that was a very strong scene, and the actual
Helped
fight
him
was pretty
stake his
awesome.
resolve.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also like I really like it. I know two of y'all did not. I liked the final Icon fight. And sure, like you didn't actually fight in
Hear
the
it,
well.
Bench.
I'm gonna
We're on the same page here because that final
Yeah.
boss was epic. I don't know what these two
Yeah.
are on.
Well, and also this is it's another one like the Ifrit. You don't fight. It's the Bahamut Phoenix and Ifrit versus Ultima. I actually really it may
I
seem
didn't like
out of
that one.
place, however, I just like the spectacle of it. It was just fun to watch.
I think it's fair to say that, but the final boss in general was absolutely phenomenal in my opinion. That was the best part of
Yeah.
the game for me.
It was
And we'll
great.
talk more about the actual ending near the end of the
I have a lot to
spoiler
say.
cast.
Did you think
But-
it was like you say like that Ultima fight? You felt like you had some challenge and pushback, and I disagree
Way
completely
more.
there. I was like I went into that fight and just steamrolled them. Like I still thought there was just nothing there.
Oh, yeah,
for me.
I was close to dying at the end.
I ran out of potions, but like I was comfortably winning the fight. Like I was definitely having some trouble. I also I didn't use a lot of the overpowered abilities. To be fair, I kind of just stuck with my parries because that was just that was what I had the most fun with in the game, was just going for parries and stuff. I could have just used the ultimate abilities and probably steamrolled him as well, but I just liked
Yeah.
having my parries.
I really
actually really thinking
I
about
liked
it.
where that fight took place though, like the whole stage and like you going up there. Like I thought like it was like the way the fight happened was really good. Like the spectacle.
I
of
like
it all. But I just
when
thought
games
I thought the actual fight was just okay.
I like when games like you make you have an enemy that has your move set, like you had with the mirror Clyde earlier in the game, and then with the final boss using pretty much all
Oh,
the
yeah, I love
icon
that
fights and shifting through them. That's just cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool trope.
Do we want to talk about Ultima just as a whole?
Real quick, Benji, did you have thoughts on the final boss, or you good?
I mean, it was like a good fight, and it was like genuinely challenging. I definitely was even on story mode I was like having issues, but I just like the pacing of it just felt so weird because at times it's like, is this the final boss? Am I gonna get faked out? Like
Yeah, that's fair.
it kind of like were there like what 4 or 5 different stages, quote unquote, not even really stages, but like
It was like
different
3
fights,
or something. Yeah.
if
like
you
around-
including like the intro when you're still with like Bahamut and Joshua though.
Oh,
Like,
then probably 4.
yeah, so it's like I just I still liked it, but I think as far as like spectacle goes, I think the Titan and Bahamut fights were better at that, and even some of the other ones. I don't know. I just it didn't resonate as much with.
You like Titan more? I mean, I can accept Bahamut, but I don't know, man. Titan was just like the whole time. I genuinely was like, what if I just uninstalled the game right now? Like, I can't take this anymore because this was what I was hyping up the whole time, was this Titan fight, and this is what I get. I was so fucking depressed after that fight. But I understand the viewpoint of like maybe the final boss not hitting as well for you. In terms of the final boss's character, Ultima himself, as Bench wanted to talk about with Ultima, I have a lot to say about Ultima and Barnabas, the
Yeah.
two main villains of this game. I'll let you go first, Bench.
I think the whole Ultima thing is a little convoluted in explanation. It's also your classic Final Fantasy God dude, but I actually just really liked it. I thought the whole like concept on how alien and he's like pretty much he created the human race and is using them and like the mother crystals he wanted you to break them. I thought his like whole narrative plot weaving through pretty much everything. He pretty much guides Clive and how Clive is mythos and like the vessel and all that. I thought it was just very interesting. And sure, there's definitely some things that a lot of people don't like and are pretty justified, but I still really liked it and didn't have any issues with it.
I'm gonna be negative. Fusion, you go first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I liked Ultima a lot, actually. I thought like I didn't see like I know some people I've talked to some people where they're like they wish it was more grounded, like the story would have stayed more grounded and Ultima like wasn't even like part of the game. Like I've seen people have that viewpoint, but it's gonna be another Game of Thrones reference. But like he gives me a lot of the Night King vibes from Game of Thrones, and I love the Night King in Game of Thrones. And maybe Final Fantasy 16 hit for me so well because it has a lot of Game of Thrones-esque things. But I thought Ultima as like a villain, like he had his ideas in place and he went after them as well as he could. And I thought like he was well written. Barnabas is a whole nother story that we'll talk about, but like
Oh,
but personally I thought Ultima was like a cool villain and like he was always in the back of my mind where I'm like, you have these
What
like
is
human
he?
villains, but like what is he?
Also, the fact that Sid knew what Ultima was, but just couldn't tell us whenever he died. Like, because he was
Yeah.
a part of Waloed and he was the leader of the army. So
Yeah,
he obviously knew. But obviously,
I thought he was well written at the very
yeah,
least.
there's my thing about Ultima. I understood what his whole plan was and everything. I just hate the way he speaks. It feels like he just talks in circles because he kept repeating things that I already knew over and over again. Kept calling me mythos, and I was like, shut up for the love of God. I was so tired of hearing him speak because I did see what you guys are talking about, the actual like cool stuff in terms of his plan and like the way he wants to remake, the human race, get rid of them, all that stuff. I thought that was genuinely really interesting, and I was very invested in that part. But hearing him talk was so grating to me because of the way he speaks. And this is more of an issue with Barnabas, but Ultima had this too, where I was just like, I feel like you could have reduced the amount of lines he has by half, and I would have completely understood everything way more, and I would have been way more invested in everything. I know it's a weird complaint to have, but I just got really sick of hearing him talk near the end.
I can see that complaint, but I think it fits him as a character because he kind of he is an egotistical god. Like that's
Yeah.
what he is. He created what he created, and he wanted it to be the way he wanted it to be.
he
You
wants
know what I mean?
control.
And
Did
like
he need to talk
it's
in
the whole thing of
circles though?
it's the whole thing about free will because that's what the story about Final Fantasy 16 is free will. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's the thing about the game is like it's all the free will to do this and that and like is free will really
to
as
live and die
bad
as
as
you choose.
yeah exactly like is
I
free
think
will an
I think
actual
that's
enemy?
fair. Yeah, that's fair. I really just think that him talking in circles was the part that frustrated me. It felt like he was just repeating a lot of the same stuff that I already knew over and over with each cutscene. I didn't need to have as much dialogue with him as I feel like the game gave me. That's just my viewpoint.
That's fair.
Do you have any
You
thoughts
got
on
anything to
Ultima,
say?
Benjamin?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ultima's a weird one for me because I will point out first that honestly the overall story kind of felt like Final Fantasy VII to me, where you had a very grounded, real conflict in the beginning of the game, and then it just divulges into this like one main villain who is like a god and turns into this whole separate like world-ending scenario. And I really like that, and I'm on board with that. But some of the stuff with Ultima, I just felt like it was being vague for vagueness sake.
Exactly. I'm right
And
there with you.
it wasn't like if they actually told the story, I felt it would have come across better as like intentionally hiding things from you just to be mysterious for the sake of being mysterious. And like one of the main things I kind of have an issue with is just like the idea that Ultima was controlling all of these vessels and like when someone is like puppeteering that much of your story, it just makes me kind of feel like, oh, none of this really mattered, and it kind of dilutes all of the stuff I was going to, because it was always going to go this way. And granted, that goes into the free will conversation, and I totally understand that, but I still I still can't help but feel like it hurts overall, like my feelings of everything that happened. But and then him as a character himself, yeah, I think he was I think both Wolf and Fusion are right, where it's like he is an egotistical asshole and his arrogance got the best of him at the end and all of that, but he still just like talked like he was so annoying and just like
over and over.
Like I think I like, even like people, like I think Barnabas, for as many faults as we will get into with him, was at least, as far as like a character himself, I was like, okay, like I can kind of get, like I can understand how he is a bad guy, even if his motives aren't there. But I felt like it was the opposite with Ultima.
I mean, we can talk about Barnabas right now if you guys want to.
Do y'all want to go second? Because I am actually positive on him, and I know you are not.
Oh, you know me so well, Bench. Yeah, go ahead. You could go first.
I really liked Barnabas. I thought he was the perfect mirror to Clive. Clive, as we know throughout the game, he's mythos, but his will needs to be broken to, like, for Ultima to claim that vessel. And no matter what happens, Clive's will is not broken, even to when he falls at his lowest. And that goes to Clive's character, and it's built up throughout the game as well. It gets stronger. It's like the stagger gauge in the game is called the will gauge. And I think that pretty much deep in the combat, you have those themes of free will in the game and just will in general. And I think Barnabas is the mirror. He's someone who long ago gave up will, became a Kashik, and like pretty much like gave himself to the flow and to be controlled, knowing he's being controlled by Ultima. And for him during the fight with Clive, I thought it was very good, very one-on-one. And I just love the ideals versus like different ideals of a character. And I really liked Barnabas for that reason. And whenever towards the end, he finally grasps free will at the end and starts to lose it, it's just too late. But he's still at the very end, even grasping that, served Ultima by giving Odin to Clive at the very end. So he was never free. And I really like that.
Fusion, Benji, you guys.
Yeah, I guess I'll go because I'm like slightly more positive than you guys will probably be. I just think he was too big of a character that came way too late in the story for me personally. Where it's like I felt like you had a couple scenes with him in cutscenes, and like he showed up a little like time and time, but like I felt like when I got to him, I was just like, by the time I got to him, all I cared about was Ultima at that point, like story wise. I'm like, I don't even care about this dude, like Odin, cool, whatever. Like it's almost like not a trope, but when he gets Jill, when he takes Jill the first time, you like have that one fight with him.
I was surprised. I'm like, you're really doing this trope now?
Like it's just they had to do something to get Clive to fully like go into that, like fully go to be like, okay, well now I have to deal with Odin because he took Jill. You know what I mean? Compared to where it's like Clive was always like, okay, Odin's there, but like I'm still like Ultima's my goal. But like but we knew Odin and Barnabas's goal was like to get Clive to, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It was a whole. I just thought it was a little too little, too late for me personally. With Barnabas.
It felt like the Empire were the main bad guys that you wanted to take down. You took them down, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess the Kingdom of Elude is there too. I guess we should probably take care of that.
They were just always out of like the main map. Like they were just always over there doing their own thing. Where it's like by the time you got to them in the story, you've already played 50 hours of this world. Where you're like, do I even care about these people? Like,
yeah, it's like who are these dudes? Like, I don't know. Just let them do their thing. I don't care about them.
If I can jump one more before Wolf goes, I think that the fact that the king did not care about Waloed, you saw explore. I think that's one of the nations that exploring it actually was pretty impactful. And I think Rosaria as well, but I think this one for sure. That you're seeing the state that Waloed is in and going after Barnabas, that he did not care about his kingdom. They're all Akashic. They're all, or like there's like one or two people you come alive and like you find the mom that has carrying the baby, and the only reason she's protected is because the baby's a bearer. It was pretty much said. and that you kind of help her through that. But you see like the state of Waloed, and that like this Barnabas didn't care at all about his kingdom, and like he wanted to control them all.
So yeah, like Bench said, Bench hyping up me as the villain, I guess. Huh? It's just like, all right, before Wolf
I mean,
goes,
that's
we
been
need
the
to be
last like
positive.
month and a half when you talk about this game. So
That's right.
True,
That's
he's
right.
a hater. Certified hater.
I'm not a hater. I like the game. I like the game. I just Barnabas. Okay, I think I learned something about myself when it comes to JRPGs, and it's just a lot of games in general, any piece of media. I didn't know what to characterize these characters, but I think I found a phrase. I hate characters that talk in Bible verses. I swear to God, listening to Barnabas speak is like a fucking cheese grater on my brain. I hate his dialogue so much because he never speaks directly. It really, as Benji was saying earlier, it feels like it's secretive and like away from the main topic just to sound cool. But in general, it just sounds dumb. I hate listening to him talk in comparison to every other villain. You know, like Ultima and Barnabas are the major issues when it comes to how the dialogue is spoken because it genuinely just feels like they're being mysterious for mysterious sake. I don't feel like, wow, they're so alien and so interesting. I just think, man, I really hate listening to these dudes speak. It feels like he's talking in circles just like Ultima. And I think it's way worse with Barnabas because I just don't find his actual motive that as nearly as interesting as Ultima because his motive is literally, oh yeah, I agree with Ultima. His viewpoint's pretty cool, and I understand the whole thing of like willpower and the idea of like Clive like being a mirror. I think all that's really cool, but the actual character of Barnabas is so uninteresting that the whole fight I was just like trying my best to tune him out while I was actually fighting him and enjoying the boss. That was basically my viewpoint on Barnabas. Is I really wish he was not talking because I don't like listening to this character.
You must hate him a lot.
I genuinely hate him. He is the worst part of the game for me, or one of the worst parts. Like I said, Crisis Core. There is a character in that game. I forgot his name.
Oh, I
Benji.
know exactly who you're
Yeah,
talking
he
about.
talks in fucking Bible verses.
Yeah.
Why is this a thing? It is not
Genesis.
cool.
Well, he
Yeah,
would talk about
Genesis.
Genesis.
Oh my god, I hate this
Uh,
trope so much. Why do they talk like this? That's not cool. It's not interesting. It just makes them sound fucking corny. Go ahead, Benji.
Oh, you know, his name was Genesis. Yeah,
Yeah.
that guy. When you said talks in Bible verses, that's the first person I was thinking of. So that's funny
Yeah.
that you ended up landing that ship because I'm like, yep, I think I agree here.
Yep.
Yeah, I think again, I'm somewhere in the middle between Fusion and Wolf, where it was weird that you see him early in the game, and then you see him kind of on the outskirts with his like second in command.
That's just him.
Right. Which was a great reveal. I will admit I like that whole little subplot. But
Yeah,
you kind of see him on the outside. It's like, okay, clearly this guy is like, you know, like you could tell from the beginning, like, okay, he is like up there with Ultima. Like there's something going on. Everyone always talks about like the kingdom of, or like the Ash continent, and like how dangerous Waloed is, and how they kind of normally stay in their own lane kind of thing. And it's like, well, what happens if they join the battle? And I felt like they were hyping him up, but then when we actually get to him, it's just like, yeah, he really is just kind of a, you know, kind of just a road bump to get to Ultima, because he basically, because of his lack of free will, he kind of just, you know, it just does. He's like Ultima's, you know, second in command, but for whatever reason, it just like I felt like there was so much more there that we didn't see, or didn't get enough of. Like I would have loved to see more of his background from like the far continent that he came from, and like how he got in contact with. Like I would have liked to seen more background, or like we never really see a lot of. I guess we do to an extent, but like I felt like with everyone else, we got like these cutscenes where, you know, we're totally away from Clive, and it's like we're in wherever, and we're getting a lot of dialogue. Like they did a lot with the Crystalline Dominion, and Sam Breck and the Dalmakians, but we never really got it with Barnabas to the same degree, and I felt like there wasn't enough like they were trying to keep him kind of mysterious and not really talk about him. And then when we get there, it's like
He's still mysterious, and it's
yeah,
like,
just
what are we talking about?
never really got it. And then okay, this is my biggest complaint with Barnabas. Someone
You were talking
please,
about this.
someone please explain to me why when you fight him in the middle of the ocean, which I admit was a very cool visual, and it's unfortunate that the one cool thing Redfall did was upstage by another game like a month later, so therefore there's no redeeming qualities to Redfall.
Status of Redfall.
Yeah, you can't believe Redfall got a ricochet in this episode, but I digress.
Yeah.
Someone please explain to me how Barnabas kicks your fucking ass, and I really liked that because I thought they were going somewhere with that. And then like I swear I understand the scene with Jill and he gets Shiva in that time between the two fights, and then he goes through the ash with Gav and Joshua, but it's like I didn't feel like there was like I was expecting him to get help in that second fight. Like I because they were going like there was a lot of moments where it's like you can't do this on your own, you can't do this on your own, you can't do this on your own. It's like okay, get help, but then he does it on his own and he still wins, and it's like when did he just magically get more free will or more like strength to beat Barnabas in the actual fight? Because
I mean,
that was just felt like a complete disconnect for me.
So Benji, there's this thing called anime.
Uh-huh.
well, no, I actually have something to say.
I'll go for it.
Was Barnabas truly going all out in that second fight?
I thought Barnabas, in my opinion, Barnabas was going. He was meant to lose the last fight.
He wanted
Which
to.
is even
He knew he
worse.
had to.
That's no dumb.
That's even worse.
Why would he beat him in the
you're
first
missing.
fight?
Because no, listen, because
He had to get Odin.
He had to get Clive to get Shiva from Jill. So he had to show Clive that he wasn't strong enough yet. So Clive now gets Shiva from Jill, goes to Odin, and that's all he had left. Odin was all he had left after he got Shiva from Jill.
So he knew.
That makes
he
it
knew
worse.
that.
That actually makes it worse.
He knew that he would get Shiva. He knew that he would get
Yeah.
Shiva as long as he kicked his ass.
Because he knows
What,
Clive
in
would do
what
anything
way does
to get
that
in the power.
imply that
I'm
he's
not
going
saying
to
that
get
makes
Shiva?
sense. I'm not saying that, but that is exactly how the story is told.
No, and that
exactly
does make sense. I agree that does make sense.
It makes sense, and it made it worse.
But it does make it worse because then it's like, okay, so Barnabas this whole time is literally just
yes, he is a puppet the entire time.
Yeah, that pisses me
it.
off. That actually pisses me off.
Like he was. That's why at the end he's like excited to like grab him by the leg, and that's when Clive is finally like, oh no, like I'm about to get Odin, and this is going to be it. Like it in the back of Clive's mind in that moment where he's getting Odin from Barnabas, he's like, there's no turning back. Like if something goes south here, Ultima wins. Like because now I have all the icons. Like this is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get it for the sake of like Ultima's ambition, but none of the other boss fights, none of the other like quote unquote villains felt like they actually had motives and intentions, and it just felt like Barnabas was there for Clive to just
he was, and I totally agree. That's why I said it was like they added him where it was like too little too late, where they add you right at the end and they're like, oh, because the other icon fights, like they weren't really puppeted enough to be like they were still trying to win their fights. You know what I mean?
They had reasons to win, whereas I feel like Barnabas,
Barnabas had no reason to win.
Yeah, exactly, and there were no stakes, and I think that's like the key there is that
I think that's
there are
cool,
no.
He knew he had to lose.
Yeah, but
it doesn't make it better.
It doesn't make it better.
We're definitely on two different sides, so
yeah. But again, it goes back to this game as a whole. The agreeing to disagree on a lot of these things is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess my final thoughts, like Barnabas is like, it's just so frustrating because I do genuinely think all the villains were interesting, like Hugo, Benedicta, the Emperor, and Annabelle, or is it Annette? I forget. Annabelle. Okay, Annabelle. I genuinely thought all those antagonists were genuinely really interesting. And you get Barnabas, and I was actually really excited to see Barnabas. I'm like, all right, let's see what this guy is. And I got nothing. And like Benji was really talking about how it felt like, how did he get to this continent? What was his backstory? What caused him to really believe in Ultima's ideal? Was there something like, I feel like I was missing that, and he just felt like such a failure of a character in a story that I did overall really enjoy. It's just this one character was the
Yeah,
one that really got me.
I agree. My last thing is like I've said it before. It's just like his character was too big for him to just be thrown in at the very end, where it was just like
Mhm.
you should have built him up at least with like you were saying, Benji, with like the other cutscenes where we would go see the other nations and we'd have a cool conversation. And like just quick side note, the live lore like event thing that they added into this
Oh,
game where
active
you can like
time
check
lore,
everything
yeah.
is so
Yeah, that
good.
was
And
incredible.
Needs to be a
every video
standard.
game should have it. Yes, that's like a quick side note. Like I will praise that all day, every day. That is really good. But it's like he should have had moments like that, and he got none of it. We like barely knew his background. We knew nothing about him other than he's just like some mysterious, super overpowered dude that's like working with Ultima.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you
no,
want to
that's
move on to the
agreed.
last 2 hours of the game?
Before I guess before we get, because I want to save the ending for the end. Yeah, haha. But I do want to talk. You guys have any like lingering like little side things that couldn't be brought up earlier before we get to the actual ending of the game?
I don't know.
Hold on, let me.
I was
Music.
oh, the
I
music's
think,
so good.
Incredible.
Incredible. Yeah.
yeah, I think we should just touch on just how good this soundtrack is.
And it's
I,
unique.
I listen to it daily.
So I did actually have a question kind of related to music because I've only played 6 and 7 and then obviously now 16. Do other Final Fantasy games not rely, but I guess use the Final Fantasy theme this much in a game? Like I know they kind of
really
remixed it,
used it here.
but they really used it, and I feel like it. Like I don't mind it, but I felt it was so weird when this soundtrack is as good as it is. I was like, okay, I get it, the Final Fantasy thing. Like, okay, we've
think
already heard this.
I think they use like pretty much they use it in the background of a lot of in some of the songs in a lot of other games, and it is in the background of some of the songs in this game where I think you can hear it a bit more, and it's a bit
Yeah.
more like the melody. It's
Yeah, it was
used in a
always
lot
like,
of music throughout the franchise.
yeah, Benji is right. Where it's like it felt like I was getting the Final Fantasy theme a lot more than I expected. It's like, it's a good song, guys. But it's
Yeah,
like
like
it very much utilized as a motif.
I really liked it in the intro because I thought of it because you
Oh
don't
yeah.
actually hear it when you load the game up, and so when you hear it in kind of that opening like 30 minutes, I was like, oh, this is great, I love this. And there are times when it builds up to a big moment where they play, I'm like, oh, this is great, I love it. And then sometimes they just start it, and it's like, okay,
I
maybe
didn't need
don't
that here.
use it here, like.
It loses a lot of the luster at points. I agree with you there.
But I did also want to shout out just like I don't think it's the actual boss theme, but it's like I remember specifically with the hunts or sometimes it's kind of like the secondary boss theme where it starts with like the
World boss theme.
Yeah.
like that song. I
Yeah,
don't
that
know
one is
why that
incredible.
one specifically I really liked.
Yeah, the
I don't know
Bahamut
overall.
fight song with like the violin going crazy was what got me the most hype.
Oh,
Oh man,
and
really?
the hideout music with the guitar might be my favorite song in the game. That shit is so
The
catchy.
first hideout?
No. So when you go to the second hideout and it's like literally all on a string guitar,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's kind of the more chill one, like it's kind of the midway point, and then they changed it later. I'm like, no, we're still using the guitar. I don't care how moody you're trying to be right
Yeah.
now. If we're in the hideout, we're using this fucking guitar.
I do think
Yeah.
as well a lot of the world themes for different locations are also very good. I don't think there's a bad piece of music in the game. There's just
I agree.
some that are very good and some that are
Yeah.
just incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned the hideout music, Bob, and
Oh, I
it
knew
did
you were gonna
remind
bring this up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to bring it up. This is so stupid. Sid's death scene. It's this emotional moment, and then I just hear bang ding dang dong, and I'm like,
It's his
"What
theme.
the fuck is this? This is dumb. It's an emotional death scene, and you put this stupid ass country hick song over it. I love the hideout theme,
Country
but it
Chicken
shouldn't be
Strays.
it shouldn't be the theme that plays over one of the main characters' deaths. It should be a somber theme, not this fucking hick music. I'm
I will say
sorry. It's
the
just
music is absolutely fantastic and will deserve awards, but like Hi-Fi Rush also came out this year, so
Yeah,
like,
Hi-Fi Rush
it's,
wins,
it's
yeah.
gonna be
No,
it'll be tough.
It'll be
It'll
second place.
definitely
Hi-Fi
be
Rush is
tough.
going to get snubbed so hard at the Game Awards. You need to prepare
What
yourself.
was this Hi-Fi Rush?
No, don't.
Oh,
It's
Fusion,
5 out of 5. It's great. It's one of the best games this year. However, it's going to be the one game that everyone is mad to get snubbed at the Game of the Year awards.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
like
I'm talking to
I
Killer
think
Fusion.
I think Hi-Fi Rush is that thing where it's like everyone likes it, but everyone's gonna put their favorite game in front of it for something, and therefore it's going to get snubbed. So yeah, I do understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I'm also being unfair because it's not even my number one. It's Zelda. So I guess
Also-
yeah, you won in that regard.
And we talked about it in the Zelda Food Coma, but Starfield also has to come out, and their
Ooh,
10-minute suite is
Starfield.
already so good.
Oh,
So
Dude,
God, man.
every time I hear that music, okay, we got back to
I
Final
haven't
Fantasy,
listened
but
to
like
it.
that
Yeah.
Starfield music is so good.
It's
I
so
need to
good.
listen to that then because I haven't listened to it yet.
it's very
Oh,
good.
it's
It's
beautiful.
a 10-minute suite on
Enon Zora at his
YouTube.
fucking peak.
I'm excited.
Another thing I wanted to bring up real quick.
Back to FF16.
Yeah. Did anyone else find it a little jarring that the actual cutscene dialogue, facial animations, like whatever, were so good, and then you'd get like the basic NPC dialogue, like
Oh, I just
like
accepted
in
this whole
engine, and
RPG.
I'm like,
That's just
oh.
fair.
I was fine with it. I think that's you have the quality gap in a decent amount of games. I'm pretty used to it at this point.
Yeah, that didn't bother me because I'm like, I've played enough JRPGs.
It's not that it bothered me, but it's like, it just okay.
Yeah, but
It's
those
a little like jarring.
I agree, and those are the things where it's like at the top of the hour when Wolf was talking about like he can't see the 10 out of 10s and even some of the 9 out of 10s. It's like those are things that like stop video games from being those 10 out of 10s. And it's
Right.
just like I felt like people I don't know where those reviews came from, but like it was like it's things like that where I'm like this game is
10
not
out of 10 should be tough to get.
yeah, this game's not close to like perfect or even like a masterpiece, and it's just like the reviews for a game that's like this highly reviewed, like score wise, I think it's at like an 89 still. Like it's so decisive, and I feel like we haven't had a game like this in years.
I
Yeah.
think it's at 87. Pikmin 4 is above it. So
Okay.
No, I think it's an
Let's go,
88
baby.
still.
I can check right now.
I think, I feel like
critical,
there hasn't been a
open critic.
game this controversial since like The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
Nah.
Nah.
Actually,
Well,
Cyberpunk.
I would just say yeah. And Last of Us Part 2, I thought was like way more controversial. Well, actually,
Yeah, I'm not saying this is as controversial. I
Yeah,
just feel
yeah.
like we haven't had
Yeah.
this much of a like line in the sand where it's like people really love it and people really hate it, and some have both. And I feel like The Last of Us Part 2 is the last game.
I was just say Deathloop. Deathloop can be a little bit.
No,
of a
that wasn't
so.
nearly as like explosive.
but I'm talking,
though.
yeah, and that was more like critics compared to like average. But it just seems like it's a bunch of PlayStation exclusive games. That's what-
People were
Well.
hating on Deathloop for a goofy ass reason. All right, that
Sucks.
game's fucking.
I think if you
amazing.
really like arcane games, I can understand why you did Deathloop.
Deathloop is my favorite
Arcane people are weird, bro. I'm sorry. That game. Is so
Have you played like Prey and Dishonored?
Yeah.
Have you played Redfall? No, I'm kidding. But no. I played Dishonored, and I think Deathloop is 20 times better than Dishonored. That's all I'll say.
crazy. Okay, we're gonna
sorry,
have
I'm
a different podcast for that.
Oh, we're
'cause
gonna
that's
have a
wild
we're gonna
take.
have a food coma for that one. I'm sorry.
Hey, you want to talk about the ending?
No, real quick. Right now, FF16 on Metacritic is at an 87, and OpenCritic it's an 88. So
Open Critic's the one that matters.
yeah,
True.
OpenCritic is the one that matters.
Pikmin 4 is tied with Final Fantasy 16. What do you know? I'm just saying.
Well, you're
Pikmin
using
4 should-
Metacritic, and that's flawed.
You can call me flawed all you want. The people have spoken.
The
I will
people
say
like
one more
people
thing
being
I want to say
Pikmin.
before we get to get to the ending. How did you guys think about the RPG mechanics of this game? Because I think that was definitely one of the most lacking aspects.
I didn't
What do
think there
you?
was
There
any.
were RPG mechanics in this
Yeah,
game?
exactly.
This brings up a
It's
conversation that infuriates me when people say this game is not a Final Fantasy game. What the
Oh,
fuck
okay,
are you
that's
saying?
different.
I turned the game on.
No,
And it
that's a
says
different
Final
thing, yeah.
Fantasy. It's a Final
That's-
Fantasy game.
Yeah, it's a Final Fantasy game. I'll give you that. I just think it's not an RPG.
Well,
Like,
so I think an interesting question that kind of broaches both of these topics is because I know some people are like, this felt more like an unnumbered Final Fantasy game.
yeah,
Like the Strangers of Paradise. Not necessarily in like quality and everything, but like just compared to a mainline game. I still disagree with that, but I think
disagree.
that it's still like an interesting thing. Like obviously, like I said before, I think this game follows a lot of like what 7 did, and like their storytelling, and like who cares if it's more action oriented and it's less turn based and there's not as many RPG mechanics. I still feel like this was a very Final Fantasy game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's enough Final Fantasy aspects to it.
Yeah, I was fine with the attack numbers just go up, but also there's another conversation that people complaining that this isn't turn-based when Final Fantasy hasn't been turn-based in a
I don't know
decade.
who those people are. They are insane.
Like they're the die-hard JRPG fans that can't they just can't play an action game or whatever, and they constantly just complain about Final Fantasy being not turn-based when it hasn't been in a decade. And it's kind of just infuriating because obviously you're not
weird.
getting what
I
just
honestly
weird.
Play another JRPG. It's so weird.
It's not to be like painting with a broad brush or throwing some shade, but like everyone I've seen that has made that comment is almost exclusively old, and I feel like is holding on to nostalgia.
Yeah, true.
Like I love turn-based JRPGs. They're probably one of the most genres I play. But come on, if one of your franchises tries to be different, then what's the problem with that?
Yeah, it's just weird because it's like they're the same people that refuse to play any other JRPGs. It's like, for the love of God, play something other than Final Fantasy. You will be a happier person. Like
they're not.
I can't. I'm taking. Yeah. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'd go play the Trails games. Those games are awesome.
Yeah, those people aren't as bad as the people who say gaming is dead because all they play is shooters. Though they're not as bad.
We could talk. That's a whole other separate conversation. But I do really want to talk about the RPG mechanics of this game. I'm just gonna make you guys think about something. If you took someone from 2006 and told them that the newest God of War game will have more RPG mechanics than the newest Final Fantasy game, they will think of you as an insane person. But that's what is happening right now. Why does God of War Ragnarok have more RPG mechanics than Final Fantasy 16?
I also didn't like Ragnarok's RPG mechanics, though. I thought they were kind of clunky.
Yeah, that's fair, but the fact is that it's still more of an RPG
still exist
than the RPG video game. This is an action through and through. But
I think that's fine. I mean, I don't know. I guess you didn't go in with the right expectations or whatever.
You didn't go in with it's a Final Fantasy game. I feel like it's fair to expect RPG mechanics.
I don't know. I don't want
mechanics that are there also felt shoehorned. Where it's like, oh, you want to equip something. It's like, okay, I go to the blacksmith, I buy the one with the bigger numbers, and then I leave.
No, I mean, that's part of the problem is that the economy in this game is busted.
It's so weird. Everything is 200 gil, and then there's just an album track that you could put in the jukebox that's 50,000 gil. It's like, what? Wait, hang on.
I will say that it fixes, it just doesn't do one of my long-running complaints with games. You don't have the chest opening animation for most of the game. You just pick up the item by running over it, and I think that is amazing.
Good. Yeah. I guess we can move on to the ending now. If there's any other lingering things you guys wanted to talk about, or do you want to go right into the ending?
No, I think I'm good. Can I start though?
All right, let's talk about the ending then. I'd say overall it was a very high quality ending. Definitely one of my favorite parts.
There's a certain thing. Can I talk real quick though?
You can talk, bitch. Don't worry about it. Go for it.
I think, before we talk about the actual going into the final battle, I kind of want to talk about right as you're about to leave and the energy there, the send-offs through characters. I thought that was very emotional on it. I got some tears during that scene. I thought, because you get the vibe that none of the three of them are coming back. It's pretty apparent that they're all committed, and everyone knows they're committed and knows they're not coming back. And you're getting the goodbye with Jill, with Gav, and it's just all the side characters are there from all the different places, and it's just heart-wrenching because you just know the energy there, and they're truly having to say goodbye. And as I've done this, you're getting all the character bonding moments, and I don't know, it was just very hard to watch and hear.
And you want to know why it was obvious that they weren't coming back?
Why?
Because Torgal didn't go. And that's when I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this really is the ending. Dude, I real quick, before we even get into that, I just thought it was so funny when Ultima created that portal, and it was like, oh, Clive and Joshua are jumping in, and then Torgal's like, yeah, I guess I'll go too. It's like, why I love Torgal, but he didn't need to be there. I'm glad
you want him there, though.
It's just funny. It's not a complaint. It's just funny to think about. It's like Jill didn't go, but Torgal, he has to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think overall that ending was very like you said, that goodbye scene was genuinely very emotional. The scene with Torgal, very sweet, and obviously Jill. Like I am just happy to see like this game really embrace the romance between Clive and Jill. Like we said, came way too late in the
Yeah.
game, but like seeing them together, they are a very
Yeah.
sweet couple.
A lot of people dance around romance, and it's good to just fully embrace it.
Yeah, just let it happen.
And it's well written, so that's even better.
Yeah.
I really like the like, and we haven't really talked about this yet, but I guess like the aftermath. Well, actually, no. Even before that, I think the scene with Joshua in the last kind of Mother Crystal room in Origin, like that, like between him
His
and
death?
Clive, yeah, his death and
That was heart wrenching.
everything that surrounded that. That was
Oh, I forgot about
just
that.
so yeah. That was yeah.
How'd you
Yeah,
forget
that
about that?
it was.
I really just did not like Joshua. Huh? Sorry,
It
go
was
ahead.
heart wrenching. It was
Yeah,
hard to watch.
Yeah, that was another really tough moment, and then the kind of fallout, like not necessarily post credits, but like post boss fight, um, with the everyone kind of understanding with the weather changing and the star going out, and everyone's kind of like no one actually says anything. They all kind of react in their own way, and it's
Jill.
yeah, and it's very, very like it's amazing how much they're saying without saying anything.
Mhm.
Like just
Yeah, no.
hearing Jill just bawling her eyes out next to Torgal, and then like Jill runs out, and then like Gav knows, and he starts crying while the baby's like
Yeah.
the first like baby being born into the
Right.
world that doesn't have to deal with this. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great moment.
also
Overall,
knowing
like,
that baby was a bear, not having to deal with this. Obviously, it didn't matter at that point, but it's
It was
still
it was it was what's the word? Not significant, but like
it meant something.
yeah, it's a contrast between who just died and like death and
Yeah.
life and that
And
whole cycle.
yeah, and I will say, Clive healed Joshua's chest, but I do not think Joshua came back to life. I just think it was painful for him to look at a hole in his brother's chest.
I agree.
he's dead. If Joshua came back to death again, oh man, we're gonna do a second
No,
spoiler
He
cast where it's 2 hours of me
he's
ranting about
definitely
Joshua's
dead.
character.
Yeah, I think it was just like Joshua's death. Whenever like because he ultimately was just sealed in him, so he just like split open, and it was just very hard to watch. All the blood everywhere, and it's like
Fusion, you've been quiet. What did you think of the overall ending?
I like the ending. I thought it like for the story that I really already liked the writing for and like liked where they were going. I thought the ending was done very well with the Joshua moment. Like you have that emotional ties with him. If you liked them, if you were like Wolf and didn't like him, then you probably just like forgot about the entire scene. But like
I'm not joking. I genuinely forgot he died.
yeah, like he's like I liked him as a character, so that was a moment as me playing as Clyde where I'm like, wow, this sucks. Like this is not what I wanted. But I think the
you got him
question,
back. Clive got him back.
exactly. I think the thing is like the very ending is very like we don't. I don't. I'm on the personal side that I think Clive survives at the end. And I know
Yeah.
I've talked to multiple people. It seems very 50-50. That's the point of the game is to like not know, but like me personally, I'm like I think Clive survives. I don't think Clive goes through all of that and doesn't survive.
I also think to add on to that Clive is the one that survives based off of the last conversation you have with I can't
Pen and paper.
remember. Yes.
The
Yeah, putting down the sword and picking up the pen. And it's like, listen, Clive's already picked up 5 different names through the course of this game. Why not just pick up Joshua's name too? Like,
Yeah.
I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility. So yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
But like
Yeah.
him on the beach, and then like it was so
The
good.
I like how they didn't really fully specify if he died or not. Like, I think he's
And
dead, but like, I like how they left that up to question. It's like,
Yeah,
I
those are
think
always
it's gonna
contested.
be. I think it's going to be one of the things where like devs are going to be asked in interviews, and it's going to be one of the things they're sworn to secrecy with.
Yeah.
Like
And-
what, like with the horn and God of War or whatever. They're never going to tell.
Unless there's a 16-2.
Or
Get
like
ready.
Hey.
what's that It's that famous YouTube video with the kiwi, and it's that really sad Mad World plays in the background, and everyone wants to know if the kiwi made it. I'm going off on a tangent, but
Wait,
yes,
Yeah, I have
what?
no idea what you're
What?
talking about.
Yeah,
I'll
have to.
I'll post it later. It's a really sweet like little 3-minute video from like 2008. Anyways, yeah, the endings where you don't get an answer and you're left to kind of use context clues and stuff, those are always the best endings. Like I would much rather them keep it vague and open to interpretation rather than just giving you an answer.
There are a lot of endings that I don't like that are kind of like that, but I think this one was done very well, and I really liked it. It's a bittersweet ending, and it's something that you have to. There's not a lot of games where whenever you sit down, sure, maybe, but you kind of have to like sit and think about it. You're just like left sitting there, and then you go to work or whatever the next day, and it's kind of like in the back of your mind for a while, and it's still in the back of my mind. I still think about it.
And I like the moment where like Jill's looking up at the star, the same star from like the very first time where she prayed to the star, or whatever, where she was like,
And
"I want
Clive
him to come back."
also looked at it.
Which is one of the reasons why I think he survived. I think that was like they put that there purposely to be like that star is still, you know, what I mean, that star's still there. At the very beginning of the game, she prayed
went
for him
out
to be
for
back and
Jill.
safe. Well, yeah,
It
but
went
like
out.
I guess that like I don't know, that was just a really powerful scene in general. But I think the ending, I think it was the way the game was going. They could have like fell flat on the ending, and they totally went with it and they totally landed it, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
overall, great ending.
Yeah, just Clive is just such a good character.
I think the last like 10% of that game, like really, I think like we were talking about the Barnabas stuff, like that part kind of like I was feeling lower on the game as a whole, but I felt like the last 10% really like solidified it to being like, oh, this is a good video game. Like I enjoyed the last 60 hours I put into this, like the payoffs I'm getting with the characters and like moving away and like knowing at the end it's like I'm not gonna talk like meet these characters again. Like I'm probably never gonna come back to this game. Like
that was also a thing where it's like it felt like, oh man, I did want to see more Clive and Jill interactions, Clive and Torgal. Like that was like a kind of a sad thing. Like, oh, I kind of did wish there was more of these characters. Not that much.
Because I mean, you have the fun cast. You that's why you like care about saving the world, not because you're the hero that needs to do it. You care about the people in it.
I think this is a game where it's like decisive and everything. If you like the characters in this game, you're going to like this game because like the cast of characters, I think is what like for me personally, it's so hard to make a really good group of characters, and I think they nailed the characters in this game.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing
cool,
though, is
dude.
that I do genuinely really love the cast of characters. Like obviously I have my qualms with like Joshua and whatnot, but like my issues are outside of the characters and even the story up until Ultima and Barnabas, but that's a whole other thing. But like the story, aside from that, is genuinely really good. It just comes from a lot of aspects of the game, like that we talked about with the side quests, the overall pacing, everything relating to like the combat being too easy, like all of that. Like, and we're gonna get into our final thoughts on the game and final scores, but I don't. I don't think. I think the characters are definitely a highlight of the game, but I don't think it fully saved the game for me personally. Again, I still like the game. I want to point that out. As much as it seems like I don't like it, I like the game. So,
do you think this game ever gets DLC? Because the only possible DLC I could see was a prequel of Leviathan and a completely like different time.
They're gonna do Leviathan. They teased it way too much. I mean, I'd be surprised if they didn't.
It'd be cool if they did, but I guess we'll see.
Just to
I think
go
at the end of the day, Ben Starr deserves.
Oh my god,
a lot of awards
to win Best Voice Actor.
Like,
yeah, it's like a lock, and if it isn't a lock,
I'll be so mad.
Give him the 15 minutes Christopher Judge took to the stage, but let's let it be Ben Starr talk for 15 minutes.
Let's calm down. Let's calm down, everyone. All right, Todd Howard is probably going to voice a character in Starfield as a joke. I think we should give it to him.
Yeah, Wolf's going to be like, "Hey, Pikmin number 3, the red one." Yeah,
listen, brother. Why does it kind of always get shit?
Like Starfield, I mean, Spider-Man will probably have some good voiced characters. However, I just can't see anything topping Ben Starr. There's just like no way.
Yuri Lowenthal's my boy, I believe.
He's like Ben Starr's like one of the best performances I've seen in like a while. Like it's like that good.
He's in the like I'm at the point with him. I need to see what he's in next. I know he's a normal like he's not a big game actor, but if I just need to be there for whatever he's in next.
Yeah,
he's gonna get more roles.
He's a voice actor that makes like there are people who really love who like Troy Baker and like Nolan North and like who follow like these specific voice actors, and I've never understood it. And like Ben Starr is the first person to be like, okay, yeah, whatever he's in, I'm in, because I get it.
See,
he's also like
that
outside of the game. He's just so cool.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Honestly, Bob, I was one of those people when it came to Nolan North because he voiced Nathan Drake, one of my all-time favorite gaming characters. And then eventually,
What game is that?
Uncharted.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I like Uncharted apparently, but what's it called? The problem is that like with Nolan North is that man, he really appeared in everything, and it's like okay, well, it's less hype when he appears in something because it's almost a given. But Ben Starr, it's like yeah, I agree with you that like I'm excited to see what he appears in next because he was definitely a high quality part of this game. I guess that's pretty much everything. Like before we get into final thoughts, did you guys have any lingering opinions? Anything you wanted to get off your chest before we get into our like final viewpoints on the game and scores?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
I think the only other thing I'll say is because we kind of talked about it in spades, but just to kind of put a stamp on it, this is a beautiful game. And is the most screenshotted game, which just literally I just played Cyberpunk, and I thought that'd be like the most screenshotted game I've ever played, and Final Fantasy 16 beat it within like a month of that. Just like the particle effects, the lighting, the characters, everything was done so well. The photo mode in that game is so good that this game is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And when the mother crystals explode, I think I take like 5 screenshots every single time. I'm like, all right, get that button ready.
I will say real quick, it is cool how like every other Final Fantasy game, it's like you got to get the elements and like get the mother crystals, all that. They're so holy. In this game, it's like nah, fuck those things, destroy them all. I was always so excited to destroy a mother crystal because that whole cutscene is genuinely very exciting. But yeah, I guess final opinions, final scores. I'll go first since I'm definitely the most negative on the game. I think the game is good. I do want to like full disparity. I think the game is overall like a good experience. I would not buy this game at launch. Personally, like launch is already passed, but I wouldn't buy it for $70. I would say that. I think the game is severely flawed when it comes to its quests, when it comes to the actual combat. And I didn't bring this up, but the fact that hard mode is locked, I know Bench is about to bring it up. I know hard mode adds a lot of stuff. It adds new enemies, all that stuff. Why is it locked? Why is it that if I want the game to be more difficult, I have to just beat the whole game first? That's a really dumb thing, and people try to compare. It's like, well, Souls, no. Souls doesn't have difficulty modes. The hard mode is right there. You just won't let me play it. That's all I'll say. But the actual combat was a frustrating aspect because I did see something so high quality there. There's such a good basis, but it's too easy. And I think the overall spectacle of the game is very high quality. I love the Eikon fights, some of them. And the characters, the story, all that is very high quality. But again, it's just those flaws. Barnabas, the side quest disguised as main quests, the actual side quests, the open world not really feeling like an open world to the point where it's like the game should have just been linear. Like it just fully accepts
an open world.
No, it's not. And that's what I'm saying though. They had like these open environments. It's like, why are these open? It's just let me go to the next place at this point. It just overall feels like a game that it's just disappointing. I expected a lot more out of this game from this team, and I was not fully satisfied with my experience. Having said that, I don't hate the game. Rating wise, I'd give the game like a solid 7.5. I was a 7 for most of the game, but I did enjoy the final boss and ending enough to at least give it that 0.5. But all of my issues still very much stand, and I don't think it's going to be on my top 10 by the end of the year.
That's fair.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to score this game in 2 different ways. And like a pure enjoyment, it's a 10 out of 10. And from a critical level, I'd say a 9.5 because there's definitely some flaws. But I mean, like, just looking back on it, but I like purely enjoyed this game. And I'm definitely in the opposing faction of pretty much almost everything Wolf said. I loved my experience with these characters. I
Yeah.
definitely do think this game is worth $70 any day of the week. I don't think, besides like Tears of the Kingdom, I can't think of another game that's like, okay, $70 makes sense for this. You're getting your money's worth. Even though I do pay $70 for a lot of games, just what you have to accept. But I think everything about this game, from the story, the characters, the music, the performances, combat, boss battles, I just don't think it can get much better than what they delivered in this game. And the 68 hours I put in were amazing, and I never really wanted it to end. And I'm still thinking about this game, probably like a little less than a month after I beat it.
What about you, Bob?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first beat the game and rolled credits and had time to think about it, I originally gave it a 9. But I think the longer I have distanced myself from beating the game, and the more I think about it, it really is a death by 1,000 cuts for me. Where it's like, yeah, I share a lot of the same opinions. Where it's like the icon battles were amazing, and it is a really good story, and there are so many memorable characters, both main characters and side characters, and there was some good side quest content, and the action was good. But then it's like, oh yeah, but I really hated some of the like pacing issues. I really hated some of the characters. Yeah, this boss fight just didn't hit it for me. And I think that has, while the great things are really really great, like it is unfortunate that the longer I have thought about it since beating it, it's like, but there are just way too many things. There are way too many hurdles I have to jump over to experience those things where it's like I can't help but like move it down. That being said, I still want to give it credit in the sense that like I am not usually a very emotional person. So if you can elicit emotions out of me and like make me tear up, make me choke, like kind of choke up and have your throat tight a little bit, it's like that you deserve credit for that. It's just unfortunate the areas where I think this game is unfortunately under delivers, and so yeah, I moved it down to an 8, and it is right now 4th on my top 10 list. So I think it'll stay there, or I think it'll stay in the top 10. But yeah, just I think, Wolf, I'm kind of with you where it's like I really wanted to love this game, but it did end up just disappointing me in too many ways for me to be able to kind of ignore them.
Yeah, I don't revel in a lot of like my issues with the game. Like, it's not like I went into this game wanting to hate it. It just these were issues that I had with the game. That's all it is. Fusion, how do you feel?
Yeah, kind of a lot of what Benji said, honestly. A lot of like, I was very high when the game first started, and it got, as the game went on, I felt like my frustrations like growing. And by the time I finished the game, I was like, I had a set score. It hasn't changed, but like as it's been weeks now since I've beaten it, I'm kind of like Benji, where I'm like, more things that I think about annoyed me than I like. And if you're not gonna like, if you don't allow yourself to like get connected to these characters and the story it's telling, this game I feel like it's not gonna do a lot for a lot of people. Like I feel like this game is so, like the combat's one thing, the combat's fun, all that, but like I'm going to keep going back to the characters where like if this group of characters isn't doing it for you, this game's not gonna do it for you, in my opinion. And like, but if it is doing it for you, like it personally did for me, this is going to be high up on like your game of the year list, probably personally. Like it's number 2 for me. I doubt there's no way it's out of my top 10 by the end of the year, and I doubt it comes out of my top 5 unless the fall really hits with like absolute bangers, which could happen. I feel like there's a lot to love, and at the same time, there's so much to hate. Where like Benji was saying, he wanted to love it, and I wanted to love it a lot, and I just couldn't get past some of the little stuff that felt like maybe in the moment when I was playing it, like into the hype, into like the pre-hype and like everyone talking about it, I let them pass a little bit. But after you beat a game and you think back, you're like, you're kind of looking back and like rose-tinted glasses. So
Yeah,
like all that being said, like personally, I gave it an 8.5. So like I'm kind of right in the middle. Like Benji's at 8. Bench is very high compared to the rest of us at a 9.5, and like you're down there at a 7.5. So like I have like I can see Bench being like maybe not that high, but like I respect his score, but I can see like points of the game where it's like, yeah, it reached moments for me where it was a 9.5, but it also reached moments where it felt like a 7. And
Yep.
it's like you have to find that middle
Or lower
ground with
for
this
me.
game. Yeah, or lower. There was parts where it's like you have to find that middle ground with this game because there's not a lot of video games don't do that. It's either like
Yeah.
you find like it's a very good like 8 or above the whole time, and you maybe never get those low 6s or low 7s, or it's like the 7s and 6s the entire time. It's very hard for a video game to do what Final Fantasy 16 did, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think one thing you said there is like just honestly a whole separate conversation that's really interesting to me is that looking back on the game, it's like when you beat a game, you tend to like kind of have all your emotions at once, and it's like, okay, maybe I think of it this highly, but then over time, over the months, you think about it more and more. It's like, did I really think that highly of the game, or did I not give the game enough credit? I mean, an example for me is Hi-Fi Rush, where I beat that game and I was like, that was a great game. Like that was like a solid 9. And the more and more I think about it throughout the year, it's like that game is way better than I gave it credit for. And I want to go back and like really solidify my viewpoint on that game. It's just a topic that's really interesting of that idea of like looking back at a game, thinking back about that game and thinking there is so much more that I like realized about the game just by not playing it. And that's interesting in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. Also, Fusion, for the record, I would have given it an 8.5, but the 20-point review scale is a coward's way out, and so I stuck with my 8.
No, wait, where did this come
Hold
from?
on,
Okay.
hold on.
No, I
I'm
said
not-
this last time too. I don't believe in the 0.5s.
Yeah, you know the sad
There's
thing
some
is
time.
this
Go ahead,
video
Fusion.
game right here made me. I'm not up
Yeah,
until
no, you're
Final
right.
Fantasy
You're right,
16.
though.
I did not have a 0.5 in any of my reviews ever until I was playing Final Fantasy 16 and Diablo 4 at the same time, and I'm like, well, this game's slightly better. Like I couldn't wrap my head around being like, I can't give them both an 8 because I don't think they're both an 8.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do it.
Yeah, no. I just like that's 0.5s because like sometimes you're like, it is not good enough to be a 9, but it's better than an 8. Like
Coward.
that's not a coward. Whatever.
He's about to make me go back. He's about to make me change my scores back
Yeah,
to
for real.
a flat number.
Bro
'Cause
called us cowards and dimps.
I'm there with Benji though. It's like for the most part, I think the whole number looks better. I think like it just like a 1 to 10 system just fits perfectly. But then you have like you were saying, some games just don't feel good enough to be a 9, but they're not like an 8 compared to a different 8. Like
Yeah, this
it's
game
so
is
hard to
very
compare numbers.
complicated.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So like if any game's going to get like a 0.5, 0.25, you know what I mean, like that type of system, Final Fantasy 16 is like the perfect
Nah,
example.
the 0.25 is the coward's way out. That's just
Yeah, I would
weird.
never do that.
No,
but,
that's
like,
the 0.25s and then like the out of 5 are
Or the
wild.
100-point scale. Oh god.
No,
Yeah, this one's a 9.8, but that's a 9.9. It's like, what is the point?
so glad
Just
IGN
tell
got
me.
rid of that.
Yeah, same. But yeah, I guess any last thoughts? Where is that everything we wanted to say about good old
I do
Final?
think this was a very good discussion. I think it's
Yes.
just one of the best discussions I've had about a game. I know we've only had one other one on the podcast, just in general. I think this was just a very grounded discussion. We all have varying different opinions that are pretty far apart, but I do think this was a very good discussion.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, just differing viewpoints. That's what's so exciting about these types of discussions is that we're able to talk to each other about something that we share such differing. Because, like, I obviously loved talking about Tears of the Kingdom, but like, all of us were so high on that game when we were doing that spoiler cast. Versus this, where we have so many differing ideologies. Like, just the fact that we talked so long about just like one cutscene before like a giant icon fight is just proof enough that this is a very interesting game to talk about.
And they're all justified too. Like I can see where
Yeah.
Bench is coming from on like a lot of his positivity where I'm negative, and then I can see like points where you and Fusion were like we differed. Like I think that's one of the more fascinating things about this game is that like a lot of the criticisms and a lot of the like over positivity, I can totally understand where that frame of reference is coming from. I just personally don't agree with it, and I think that just makes it so interesting.
Yeah. I guess that's everything that we wanted to talk about Final Fantasy 16. Again, very awesome discussion. Bob, thank you so much for coming back as a guest. You were awesome.
No, thank you, Mr. Kirasan, again for inviting me on his behalf. Wouldn't have been here without him. So,
Yeah, we're just too big for him. It's totally understandable. I get it. But yeah, if everyone who watched this, thank you so much for watching. Please like us. Check us out on all the podcast apps. We could really use the
Yes.
support. We are brand new, and we want more of these type of discussions, and we get more of these discussions because of the support you guys give us. So please keep helping us out. It really means a lot to us.
Yes.
Also follow our Twitter account. My boy Bench handles that, and
Yep. On Blue Sky as well.
Misspells a lot of stuff, but we're
Yeah,
overall.
go Zalo and Zeet about the about our show
Zalo.
tonight. That'd be great.
But oh man, Bop, if you watched the latest podcast, I kept wanting to call it Axe instead of Twitter, and
I
hate
did.
myself
Yeah, I
for it.
saw that.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Join us for the
you.
next Food Coma, whenever that will be. I guess. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Torgle.
Torgle.